Regular session open meeting back to order. We start with Roman numeral 3. Gina.
Thank you. I recommend that minutes pertaining to collective bargaining, the NEA ESP negotiation update, remain sealed until such time as an agreement has been reached.
So moved.
Mr. Luzon made the motion. Mr. Callahan seconded. Any discussion with regards to these minutes? No, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Any recusals or abstentions? No, doesn't seem to be. It looks like the vote is unanimous. Thank you very much. Number 2.
I recommend that minutes pertaining to the collective bargaining memorandum of agreement between the Charahoe Regional School District Committee and the NEA Charahoe pertaining to graduation portfolio remain sealed until such time as an agreement has been reached.
So moved.
Ms. Luzon made a motion. Mr. Callahan seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? No, I don't see any hands. Take this to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, George. Any opposed, abstentions, or recusals? Thank you very much. Number 3.
I recommend that minutes relating to the privacy of students and their records, approval of home instruction requests remain sealed.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan. Thank you, Mr. Luzon. Ms. Luzon made the motion. Mr. Callahan seconded. Any discussion? No. Okay, we'll take it to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Abstentions or recusals? No, the vote is unanimous again. Thank you so much. Now we're on to item Roman numeral 4. Ms. Giusti.
Yes, disclosure of executive session votes. We had 5 votes. The first vote, executive session minutes of December 15th, NEA ESP negotiation update. There were 9 in favor, no opposed, no abstentions, and no recusals. In favor, Callahan, Chambers, Day, Juicy, Liguori, Luzon, Lyall, McAllister, and Stahl. The second vote was executive session minutes of December 15th, matter of security. There were 9 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, and 0 recusals. In favor, Callahan, Chambers, Day, Juicy, Liguori, Luzon, Lyall, McAllister, and Stahl. Third vote, home instruction request of December 15th. There were 10 in favor, no abstentions, no votes, and no recusals. In favor, Abbott, Callahan, Chambers, Day, Juicy, Liguori, Luzon, Lyall, McAllister, and Stahl. The fourth vote, home instruction requests for tonight. There were 3. We voted on them as a block. There were 11 in favor, no abstentions, recusals, or no votes. In favor, Abbott, Callahan, Chambers, Day, Juicy, Grover, Liguori, Luzon, Lyall, McAllister, and Stahl. The final vote was to return to open session. 11 in favor, no abstentions, no recusals, and no nay votes. In favor, Abbott, Callahan, Chambers, Day, Juicy, Grover, Liguori, Luzon, Lyall, McAllister, and Stahl. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Giusti. Thank you. Okay, on to Roman numeral 5, recognition. Appears to be none at this time. Then we'll move on to public forum, Roman numeral 6. Those are any of our attendees that are in the audience. If they would like to speak on a matter that's not on the agenda, they can raise their hand, and I could call on you. So if anyone wants to be heard, please raise your hand. If you're not sure how to do that on Zoom, if you hit the participants button, you'll get a little icon on the bottom that says raise hand, and I have a list here so I can see if you want to make a comment. I don't see any hands raised, so I will move on to number 7, policy.
So this is a recommendation of approval of the adoption of this policy, which is for the security program. It was drafted by the trust, approved by the audit subcommittee, and reviewed by legal counsel.
So moved.
Second, motion was made by Mr. Luzon, second by Mr. Callahan. Any discussions or questions pertaining to this policy? Yes, Mr. Day.
Yes, I was concerned, not concerned, but had a question on why it's referring to the residents of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in that first paragraph.
I still had two.
Probably an error. We will have it, we will capture that in the minutes that we can do, we can revise it. Good catch, Bill.
Any other questions, comments? So just to understand, and we're going to approve it with the, do we need to make another motion that we're going to approve it with the correction?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you, okay. Can someone, yes, Ms. Chambers? Yes, okay, so,
Madam Chair,
yes, Mr. Luzon.
the way that is written, because it says in if applicable, residents of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, can we get, is John still with us? I mean, there might be a reason why it's there.
Ms. Chambers?
My thinking was, do we have staff members who are residents of Massachusetts? And if so, why aren't we then putting in Connecticut as well?
Connecticut.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
So-
have, you're correct, Donna. We have staff, Massachusetts and Connecticut.
so we probably need to add any other state besides Rhode Island and Massachusetts that our staff member, any staff member resides in, so. So we probably, maybe we need to hold off on this, I don't know.
I tend to agree with you.
Yeah, I'm thinking that too. Can we table this until those corrections are made and then is there any reason why we need to adopt this policy this evening?
I'm gonna ask Ned just to jump in to make sure.
Okay.
No, it's not a rush to approve the policy, but I believe the language is that way to specify the laws
Mm,
that we're under and to also capture future regulation, which may come into play in Connecticut and any other states that our staff or students happen to be in. But I believe it's written that way for that reason. But I agree that John should weigh in and just make sure.
Okay, so,
You want a motion to table it, Chair?
yes, please. I was just gonna ask the motion.
Chair, I make a motion. First, do we have a motion to accept it?
I think we need to, okay, so if I understand it correctly, we had a motion to accept it and we had a second and we had a discussion. So I think we need to take a vote on that before we close it. Mr. Callahan, please weigh
I
in.
withdraw my second.
And I
Okay, you withdraw your second.
I
Okay,
withdraw
thank
my motion.
okay, thank you. Okay,
Madam
so
Chair, I make a motion to table this item.
thank you. Okay, second, Mr. Callahan. Mr. Luzon made a motion to table this item. Mr. Callahan seconded it. Any discussion on that motion? No, thank you very much. Let's go put it to vote. Those in favor? Okay. Any nays or opposed? Don't see any. Yes, Mr. Stahl? You're opposing?
No, I'm not opposed. I just, you missed my hand on quick discussion and it was.
Oh,
just-
I'm sorry.
That's
Go ahead.
okay. It's just a note that when these are policy things and whoever those come through, whatever committees they come through or legal counsel, it'd be great if they were here when we voted on a policy change. That would just be helpful.
Okay,
There's something that's gone through John, through legal counsel. He should be here when we vote.
Okay.
on it, so
thank you for that point. Thank you.
But I was in
Sorry for
favor.
missing you.
No problem. No problem. And I was in favor. So.
Okay, good. So back to those in favor? Yes. Okay, thank you. Any opposed? Recusals or abstentions? Okay, that was a unanimous vote. Thank you so much. 7B, Ms. Picard.
So this is secondary grading policy revision. I recommend approval of the revision of this policy, which centers around the middle school learner qualities. And Mr. Zenian and I believe Ms. Florence are both on if there are any questions.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ryan. Okay, so moved.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Luzon and a second from Ms. Juicy. Any discussion on this policy? Any questions from the committee? Don't see any. Okay, don't want to miss anybody. Please shout out if I do. Okay, so no discussion, so we'll move it to a vote. Those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Abstentions or recusals? I don't see any, so that was unanimous also. Thank you very much. 7C.
This is for academic requirements for high school graduation revision. I recommend approval of the temporary revision to this policy to waive the must-pass expectation for all classes that are graduation requirements for the first semester and the second semester of the 2020-2021 school year on page 3. While all students have the opportunity to retake should they fail to meet proficiency, as long as the student's semester average is a 70 or above, the student is not required to pass the summative assessment to pass the course. This mirrors a decision made last spring for semester exams and considers the challenges of providing remediation and instruction within the allotted 10 days from the exam, given the potentially large number of distance learners and concerns about students carrying remediation and reassessment responsibilities into semester 2, and equity issues of exam retakes integrity for in-person versus distance learners. And then just an additional revision was the removal of testing language that is outdated on page 6. And I know Mr. McKenzie, I believe, is here if there are any questions.
So moved.
Mr. Luzon made the motion, Mr. Callahan seconded. Any discussion on item C or questions for? I don't see any. Okay, so there's no discussion, no questions, so I'll move it to a vote. Those in favor of adopting this revision? Thank you. Any opposition, any opposed? Don't see any. Any recusals or abstentions? No. Okay, so it looks like that revision has passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Now we're on to item 8, which is business. Letter A.
So I recommend approval of the new curriculum resources to meet Rhode Island General Law 16-22-30, which is a statewide academic standards for 16-22-31 curriculum frameworks and 16-22-32 high quality curriculum and materials, otherwise, and 16-22-33, which is the curriculum implementation accountability requirement, also known as the curriculum bill. Jane is here to provide an overview of this new state mandate for our ELA and math resources. And I just want to thank her and the team that she's been working with, as this has been an extensive amount of research and review. So thank you, Jane. And Jane will share with you her presentation.
So moved.
There was a motion and by Mr. Luzon, a second by Mr. Callahan. So I guess at this point, the discussion would be Jane would offer her presentation.
And then the committee would be able to ask questions on the presentation.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you. Okay, Miss Jane Daly, you're on.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'm going to share the screen right now to give a warning, so it's not going to change to the presentation, hopefully. Okay. All right, I have my mic on, right? That's always a good start. All right, so we started doing this work this school year, and I'm very excited to share with you what we've learned over the past few months. First, there is new Rhode Island legislation, which states that districts have to select identified high-quality curriculum materials no later than June 2023 for English and math in grades K to 12. And for science in 2025. Also, as part of this legislation, Rhode is going to release lists of these materials that we can choose from. So they did do that this June for English and math. And all the materials that are selected have to meet the district's cultural and linguistic needs and support culturally responsive and sustaining education. And just so you know a little bit about what high quality curriculum materials are, they're defined by Rhode as a standards-based sequence of planned experience where students practice and achieve proficiency in content and applied learning skills. Essentially, it's the materials, the methods, instructional methods, and the assessments, all as one comprehensive package to effectively support instruction and learning. And why now? Being in the middle of a pandemic isn't necessarily the best time, but it did also highlight a need in the district really for better access to digital curated resources for our teachers and students to use. And also the pandemic moved us much quicker to one-to-one for the elementary grades, much faster than we had ever planned in our district technology plan. Another factor that made us take a look at this year is the fact that the programs themselves, the quality of them is improved immensely since the last just few years. The new programs that have now been approved by Rhode and are on this list are types of programs that I've just never seen before. They really meet all the needs, everything that you'd be looking for when you try to purchase a curriculum program, they really contain. So the quality of them also has kind of moved us to looking at what would help us out for our students best this year. And Rhode did publish their list this summer. So it made sense once they published that list to get started. Also, the reason we chose English to start versus math is because our current grade K-8 math program, Ready Common Core Math, it's already on the approved list. So we knew that we had an approved math program, but we did not have an approved ELA program. This is the team that has committed a lot of time this year to do this research and to get input back in their schools from the teachers, and then bring that to the team. We've worked with Rhode and a group called Ed Reports, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, to really dig in deep through this process to identify the best resources possible. And just so you know where we stood currently for ELA, all our teachers have been trained in core literacy. We have a locally developed Charahoe English Language Arts curriculum that the school committee has approved, and it is aligned to the Common Core standards. However, a locally developed curriculum on its own, it's not on the Rhode's list of high quality curriculum materials. Right now, we have individual teachers or groups of teachers that pull together instructional materials. We also have a lot of other resources that teachers use. We have grade level libraries and classroom grade level libraries. In 5th and 6th grade, we were using a consumable called Ready Common Core Reading. However, Ready Common Core Reading is not on the Rhode approved list. Although, as you might remember a few minutes ago, I did say Ready Common Core Math, different program, it is on the Rhode approved list. And just to go through what our process has been so far, we've gathered and analyzed data, including we did a survey with parents and staff. We reviewed the district strategic plan and our guidelines that we've published. And these are all live links on here. Also, any live links at the end of this presentation, they're listed and referenced for anyone who's interested. We've, like I said, worked with Rhode and Ed Reports to really do a deep dive and investigate the different choices available. And then we have made our final selections. We've decided one program for grades K-5 and the other is for grades 6 to 12. Just a summary of some of the data that we looked at. We looked at ELA achievement data on state testing, so percent of students that were proficient. And for all students, K to 12, based on state testing, it was 60%. But then when we looked at students with disabilities, it was 16%. So that's a wide gap. And when we looked at the results for African-American students, they were only 7%. So those were the largest gaps that we had. When we surveyed teachers, 87% spend 2 or more hours a week just to develop their own materials. And 42% spend 4 or more hours a week. So that was really telling. And I'm sure, I know how hard our teachers work and how important it is for them to provide good instruction for students, but can you imagine if they were able to spend that time not on just gathering the materials, but actually thinking about the best way to use them for individual students and to be able to target instruction better. And we also surveyed parents, and 59% of parents whose children were learning in person felt that they were able to support their child with the materials, but only 45% of parents whose children were distance learning. And the other thing from the parent survey, 36% felt that our current online and tech resources were well organized and easy to use. However, that means, quite a significant percent didn't feel they were well organized and easy to use. We also asked our teachers, what are some of the must-haves that you really want in a curriculum program? And so proud of our staff, meets the needs of our learners. That was their top priority. Certainly they want ease of use. They want flexibility in how they can organize those materials to meet their students' needs. Obviously, standards aligned. We want to make sure that we're developing writing skills, so that's into purposeful instruction and writing, and also supports for students with disabilities. And then just overall from the comments, teachers said consistency and amount of time needed to curate is their biggest concern and current issue with what we're doing now. And from parents, they see a need for materials which engage, challenge our students, and are diverse. The next part of our work was to look at the district strategic plan and also other different supporting documents. And from that and the data, the team came up with what is our vision as we went and looked and selected our ELA materials. So some of the highlights, is that we were looking for a program which explicitly and systematically taught reading, writing, speaking, and listening strategies, the foundations for students in the youngest grades. Certainly, we want to be able to provide personalized instruction. We want high quality, diverse, culturally relevant, complex text. And we want to build students' background knowledge, vocabulary. And again, it's important that we provide instruction in writing and we foster discussions anchored in evidence from the text. Digital and critical thinking skills were extremely important. Also, as we looked at the different programs available. So what we ended up from all of that information, the team came up with what's our top selection criteria as we looked at these different programs that were available. And they had to be on the RIDE list of approved high quality programs, but to be on that list, they also had to be highly rated by Ed Reports. And Ed Reports is a nonprofit independent organization that does reviews of instructional programs by teachers, by educators. So those things were synonymous, were in the same, but also very important. We decided that what was most important, there were very few programs that were one program for K to 12. For those grade spans. So we decided if we couldn't just find one program, where the split would make most sense if 6 to 12 had the same program for vertical articulation between the middle school and high school, and K to 5 from the elementary schools to the middle schools. And that's what we actually did end up selecting. I've talked about some of the other things on this slide already, but again, you'll notice at the end, a digital platform was most important for us. Ed Reports also just in the last year, because of remote learning and distance learning, started to create reports also about enhanced technology features that different programs have. So just on this slide, you'll see here's a link in the website for Ed Reports. And this is just a sample of what a high level report looks like, where they rate it for each grade level on these different characteristics. And then when you go in and you look further, you'll see under each of these, like text quality, there might be 6 or 7 other things that they look at much deeper. And if it's in the green, that means it scores very high and it meets expectations. So, ta-da, this is what we ended up choosing. So for grades K to 5, we chose the program called Into Reading. And that's by HMH Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, I believe. Does that sound right? Yeah. And then that's the publisher. And then for grades 6 to 12, we chose Study Sync, and that's by McGraw-Hill. And next, one of the people on our committee, Joe Gencarelli, volunteered to help with the presentation. So he's going to introduce you to the program Into Reading. Joe? You might have to be able to unmute yourself.
Perfect. I needed access to that.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone, and good evening. But I just wanted to share some information regarding our program that we chose, Into Reading. I want to give a big thank you to our reading specialist, Carrie Pastori. I think who was also on the call. Without her, could never have done this myself. So thank you, Carrie. But just here's an image of what a kit's going to look like. And there's so much involved in these kits and so many useful resources for teachers. And that's what we loved, that it was so user-friendly for the teachers. There's teachers' guides for reading, for writing. There's what Carrie and I really liked was that at the end, like there's a book called My Book in this program. And it's just lots of selected reading materials that students will have access to. So it's a workbook and they get to take it home at the end of the year, and they have these stories throughout the summer to read, to practice, and things like that. And it's just it's like a thick handbook, but there's writing activities as well within that book. There are big books for K and 1. There are read aloud books. There's the Rigby leveled books. There's just a ton of information in these kits. So some program highlights is, it's standards aligned instruction to the Common Core, this flexible reading workshop model, which all of our teachers use. There's vocabulary, and foundational skills development. That's one thing that Carrie and I really liked was the amazing work that this company has done with foundational skills, especially in the grades K1 and 2. There's engaging in authentic literature, big books, Rigby readers, decodable texts, all like leveled books for teachers to use as students go from level to level. There are lots of materials, hands-on, and we have fully digital access to all these materials. There's extensive writing support that are anchored to mentor texts, and reading inspires writing, so it's just embedded in this program. There's embedded assessments for data-driven differentiation. Again, as Jane Daly had said there's Ed Reports, and it was Rhode approved. And there's initial and embedded professional development throughout. So engaging authentic literature. So what I wanted to share here is just like Into Reading provides a balance of fiction and nonfiction. It's a multi-genre text sets that are carefully curated. It's content-rich, authentic selections that are engaging, award-winning, and these texts are ethnically diverse. and it's connected foundational skills like I was mentioning earlier. And just like a good mechanic has a toolbox, Into Reading provides you with all the tools you need to differentiate for students. It's another unique resource included is something called Alpha Friend cards and videos. So in addition to the cards, there are these videos for each letter of the alphabet to help support students. They're very cute and animated little videos. There's the writing workshop. Writing workshop is organized around 12 modules, highlighting different forms of writing like narrative, informational, opinion, letter writing, research report writing. Each module includes a mentor text to serve as a springboard for student writing. And Into Reading doesn't just, suggest what mentor text to use, they actually supply them for the teachers to use. And here's just a sample of what one report could look like. So teachers have access to a lot of data, a lot of reports in this program. As students complete online assessments, the platform that they use is called Ed, creates reports that show how students are performing over time, providing class and individual student data. And if teachers want to look at a specific assessment, teachers will be able to see the most missed standard, how students performed question by question, and also how long it took a student to take the assessment, which is very important, because if it's a couple minutes, they didn't go through it well enough. So it's just some great assessment features as well throughout this program.
All right, thank you, Joe. Is there anything else? I don't want to cut you short. Is that good?
Yeah, I think that's great. We're just very excited. I think this is going to meet our needs and more. So thank you for the opportunity to be part of this committee.
Thank you so much. So again, that program, Into Reading, is for K-5. So that's all of our elementary students and then our 5th graders at the middle school, which will help with the transition. And then the next program is called Study Sync, and that's for students in grades 6 through 12. So that'll be middle school through high school. And again, you can see a picture of the box and the materials. However, this is a fully digital program. So this program will really not require the purchase of many hardcover type of texts and materials, because we already have a lot of like the novels that they use in the program for grades 6 to 12 in our middle school and high school. But what it will provide is a full 100% single sign-on digital program. And because at the middle school and high school, we've been one-to-one much longer, and also it's more age appropriate, the digital solution is a perfect solution and perfect platform for delivery of the information to students at middle school and high school. But again, they'll still have the novels to read alongside, following along with the platform. So for Study Sync, there are embedded assessments. There's very rich and representative literature. There's flexible pathways for which have novel study units. So each teacher can decide, here's a unit they need to teach, but here's 3 different options and ways that they can teach it, and different novels they can use. But it's not 20, it's a limited amount, which is good because we have some consistency, but it also allows for the teacher to decide what's the best way to move forward for the class in front of them. There's differentiation and language supports. Again, Ed reports and Rhode approved, customizable professional development, and a strong school-home connection. And as I said, there's flexible pathways and delivery options. So for grades 9 through 12, they might decide to approach it thematically, or they may decide to approach meeting those standards through a novel study. There's grade level units of study. And there's also a full library of literature and resources that will be available to all the students, and online digital access. At the middle school, at grade 6, because at 6th grade, they have 2 periods of English instruction, and all the teachers teach one of those. We will be still getting a consumable workbook for 6th grade. So I did want to mention that, but 7 through 12 would be fully digital. And 6th grade will also have full digital access. So their digital connections, they really are very intuitive, easy to use, accessible student experience, customizable delivery. They have a built-in plagiarism checker, which is something that I know our teachers have asked for. Peer review for collaboration. A lot of the instructional strategies as part of the program really focus on student discourse. So even through using technology, putting a focus and a high importance on students collaborating and speaking with each other as they are learning and discussing the material. There's great prompts for student discussion throughout each of the lessons. And a student mobile app, and it can integrate with Google. And InterReading can also. And they also have a full assessment suite that's part of the program, which includes a grade book and data reporting. And you can see for this example, it's a sample of a class, and it just shows you for each student how they performed on an assessment, and then there's a summary also of the standards. These represent Common Core standards. So a breakdown of how they performed on each of the standards in that class. Another piece, because these both programs are so digital, Sean Cole was also brought in the last month before we made final decisions to review the programs and make sure that they're going to work with our systems, and that, you know, he approves of them in terms of being able to work with our technology, and he does. So next steps. After this evening, we'll be doing presentations for teachers and parents on the selections. We've got samples coming. Some samples have already arrived, and teachers have been looking at them at the high school. We're working to secure funding through the budget approval process right now. And certainly this evening, we're hoping that you'll support the adoption of these two programs. We're going to be providing professional development for teachers of English language arts on the new program. And we will also have to reconvene the ELA curriculum task force, even though this isn't on our 5-year plan for next year. And now it will be, because we'll just need to do some review of our curriculum, the programs, and we might have to realign some of the standards for next year. Proposed costs. So this did come up in the recent budget meetings. What I did is I broke it down with just by those budget groups. So we had the 53,000 lines, which we were talking about the budget in that way, for purchase professional and technical services. For a grade K-5 program, that's $24,735. For 6 to 12, it's $65,676. Now, that includes the professional development, which as a total for both programs is about $11,000. So 11,000 of these two amounts is really professional development. The rest is the digital licenses for students and teachers. And then in terms of supplies, especially in this first year, for grade K-5, it's going to be a higher amount because you're getting novels, you're getting leveled libraries for each classroom. Now for that, the leveled library is for students to read at their own level different books. We're going to be getting one leveled library for every 2 teachers. Those cost $850 each. And for the number of classrooms we have, we really didn't think it was feasible to ask for one for each classroom for next year, because we also already have very extensive and quality leveled reader libraries in our classrooms now. So if we purchase one for every 2 rooms, we'll be able to use it, assess what else we might need, and then make a decision about that for next year. But I feel very confident that this total amount, 187,690, purchases everything that we need, that, you know, is really will be able to provide a high quality curriculum program for our students in K-12 in English. And there were some things we would have purchased if we weren't going to propose this purchase. And so those things we've already reduced in the budget, and that those reductions took place in December, and that totaled about $20,000. So I hope that gives you a high-level overview of what the costs of the program are. And like I said, there are links throughout the presentation, but just for your ease, and sometimes the links always don't work, especially when you're on a Zoom call. So here are the full addresses. If you wanted to put any of them into a browser, then you could look a little bit more deeply at, for example, the Interreading program or Study Sync, or any of the other things I spoke about this evening. And now, if there's any questions.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Joe. Any questions from the committee for Jane or Joe? I am looking. Okay. Oh, good. Okay. So we have, I'm just going to go just in the order. So Mr. Day and then Ms. Chambers.
Yes, Jane, as I understand it, this is another one of the state mandates that we really have no control over. You stated earlier that these are going to be implemented over the next couple of years. So I just want to bring that forward again because of budget concerns that people have, that this is something, am I correct in saying that this is a new state mandate that is going to require us to fund it? That's my basic question.
Yes, that's correct.
Ms. Chambers, Donna?
Yeah, that was a great presentation. I think the materials look very exciting. I have one question about a term that was used, but also I just am so impressed with how, I haven't looked at it in publishers in a long time, but boy, they really are on the ball for including everything of the needs for the teachers today, the assessment, the breakdown, the technology, all of it. And I like that you put the links in there as well for us at the end, which made it very helpful to review the materials. So all of it, I'm very impressed. It's a good job. I feel very supportive of this. My question is what is a mentor text? I'm not familiar with that term at all.
Sure.
Yeah.
I wasn't either, but it's a textbook that I believe, I'm not an ELA major, I'm a math, but it's a textbook, Gina can jump in, but it's a textbook that you read the book with the students, and then their writing assignment is meant, like, that's the main text that you use to get them excited about writing, and then their writing prompt or their writing work is based on what they read in that text.
Okay, great. Good.
Just to add, that was a great explanation,
Yeah.
Jane, even though, so an example would be in elementary school, like a book like Owl Moon that a lot of us know really well. If I was teaching, really accentuating details in my writing, the teacher would hone in on how the author uses details in that mentor text. And we sometimes they called anchor texts, so you can use them, but basically we use authors' use of details or author's use of theme, author's use of plot to be able to anchor the students to see how it's used in a text.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's great.
Ms. McAllister, you have the floor.
Thank you. I certainly can appreciate all the work that went into this. It was an incredible job to pull it all together, and I know from experience it's not an easy one. My question is, for these amounts, the professional development, will that be ongoing? Will that come out of, not just the first year, but after that too?
Those prices are actually just for the first year.
The first year.
Right, but
And
I do believe that, you know, I feel that, I feel like that after we have that professional development, it felt pretty comprehensive with what I read about it and talked with the reps about. So I don't know how much we would need beyond that. I guess it would just, we would have to assess to see how the implementation was going.
My experience with Houghton Mifflin, they do support you after. They're good at keeping you in the loop.
Right, and there's in some of that actually, that's what the cost is, but we're actually getting additional PD for free as part of the quotes, and then there's some that's a cost, and there's some that it is ongoing in terms of support with the program, but these are going to be, the costs are more about some initial presentations and professional development, but some with the digital access, there is ongoing support.
Okay, and the digital part of it, that's a yearly or an annual license that we will be buying.
Yes.
And then the supplies will add into it too.
The supplies we should not have to, especially where we would be, except for the consumables. So for interreading, many of the novels that we purchase or the teacher books, or we will not have to buy them every year. But there is a student consumable, a student workbook, which we would.
Okay, thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
Committee, does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Can I add one more thing?
Yes, Ms. Daly, please. Thank you.
Ned actually had mentioned this to me, and I meant to say it as part of the presentation, but just that we definitely selected the materials based on what we thought would be best for students. But we also we were practical. So I just want to make sure I understand that there are other programs out there that are very good, very costly. And we felt that we found the best program for the best amount of money too. So we did factor that in. But in the end, I know we all felt these were the best programs no matter what.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Okay, so we did have the recommendation from Superintendent Picard to recommend the adoption of this new ELA curriculum, and we did have a motion and a second on the motion. So if there's no other discussion or questions, I'd like to move this to a vote. Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, please, Mr. Luzon.
Jane, could you just reiterate again? I mean, you implied at the elementary level there was going to be shared kits.
The only thing that will be shared, all of the teacher resources we're purchasing for each teacher in each classroom. The only thing that's going to be shared is there's something called a leveled library, so that when students are reading independently, they can go and select a book at their reading level. And so those come with the program, and we're excited about that because some of the texts in there we know are newer, and they're really good texts. But we also know that in each of our classrooms at our elementary schools, they already have level reading libraries. So I feel confident that purchasing one for every 2 teachers is still a good approach. And then once we purchase those, if we decide, okay, in the future we may need to have some more, then we'll come back. But because they already have libraries now, they may have some of the books. Like, we don't know yet, because it's a very extensive list of titles, and every teacher's got different books in their classroom. So I think we kind of would have to assess.
So including existing inventory, you're implying of text we already have.
Yes.
What happens if there's 3 sections in a specific grade? They're going to share, or what normally 2 would share?
No, if there's 3 sections in a specific grade for a school, then I budgeted for 2 libraries for that school.
Okay.
And the other thing is, as we continue, I mean, I keep working with the companies on the pricing on interreading. Initially, they gave us 10% off, and now I got them to 15% off, and I'll keep fighting. So if I can, get within my budget still and get more, I will continue to try to do that. But I do feel they're not essential that each teacher has their own to teach the program. And I feel that what I'm putting forward is gonna provide for the teachers exactly what they need to teach the program in full.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Luzon. So do we have any other comments or questions from school committee members? I don't, and I also don't see any hands raised from the community either. So the vote before us is to recommend adoption of the new ELA program that was presented, which is a K through 12 K through 5 and 6 through 12 program that was reviewed by Ms. Daly. Those in favor of adopting this new curriculum, please, those in favor? Okay. Any opposed to the new curriculum? Any recusals or abstentions? I don't. Yes, Mr. Day.
Yes, I want to go down. I'm not opposed to this program. I think it's a very good program, but I'm going to abstain because this is another one of the unfunded mandates that the state is pushing down on the taxpayers. And there was some legislation passed and there was some information passed out that these unfunded mandates were going to be funded, and we keep getting cut and what they're sending down here to Charahoe. So I'm not opposed to the program. I think it's a great program, but I feel I have to stand up against all these unfunded mandates that keep driving our budget up. We have a good program here and the state is stepping in and saying it's not good enough. So that's why I'm abstaining.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Okay, so thank you. So it looks like we had, that would be 10 in favor and 1 abstaining, because I believe there's 11 of us here today. Okay, thank you very much. So the program is adopted and it passes. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Daly. Thank you, Joe. Okay, so business. Now we're on to letter B.
So we're looking for approval of the memorandum of agreement between the Charahoe Regional School District Committee and NEA Charahoe pertaining to the graduation portfolio. I recommend approval of the memorandum of agreement between the Charahoe Regional School District Committee and NEA Charahoe pertaining to graduation.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Luzon. Mr. Luzon made the motion. Mr. Callahan seconded. Any discussion with regards to this MOA? Any questions? Yes, Mr. Stahl.
Just for the sake of everybody, I read it and still would like just a little more clarity, and
Sure.
because we got the approved one, but late. Could maybe Gina would be the best person. Just kind of summarize it for us in a nutshell of really what this is doing, what it's changing.
So sure, I'm actually going to pitch that right to Principal McKenzie, who's going to provide you.
He came on just as you.
He knew, he was ready.
You knew the question that was coming, so
We right up.
just looking for a summary.
So historically, as a part of the NEA contract, we have every certified staff member in the district has the responsibility to judge and observe 2 graduation portfolio presentations. And this year, with the number of unknowns related to when we're going to be in person or whether we're going to be distance learners, whether distance learners are going to present virtually or in person, and the challenges of in-person graduation portfolio presentations, we made the decision in consultation with the high school leadership team to do all virtual graduation portfolio presentations. That creates the opportunity for more of family and friends to attend. It's become something of a cultural component of our school community that friends gather to kind of celebrate those graduation portfolio presentations and observe each other's, and that's been something that's been trying for the last year, to be sure. What we're doing is a little bit of a compromise in the memorandum. We're reducing the amount of notice that teachers have that they have to sign up for a portfolio presentation that's going to happen virtually. That's one give, and the take is that they're only going to have to do 1 observation. We're going to use the facilitators that traditionally coordinate and work with the judges to help them understand all the components and the rubrics of the portfolio presentation. So every certified member of the Charahoe School District is only going to be responsible for judging one of the presentations. And we're giving 2 weeks notice prior so that we can kind of coordinate them, just to make sure that we have the opportunity to make that happen with minimal conflict in terms of everybody getting to where they need to be.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Mr. Zinn? No. Yes, no, okay. So we had a motion and a second to approve the memorandum of agreement between the Charahoe Regional School District Committee and the NEA. Those in, oh, I'm sorry, did someone say anything? No, okay, those in favor? Let's see.
Aye.
Thank you. Those opposed? I don't see any opposition. It looks like the memorandum has been approved by the school committee with a unanimous vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Okay.
Craig.
Now, thank you. Thank you. Now we're on to letter C, necessity for school construction update and decision.
So Ned Draper and the Necessity for School Construction Committee Chair Ryan Callahan will provide an update, and we also have RGB present for that presentation as well to review the options for the decision for tonight. Just to note that there is a new presentation listed in the attachments on the website as well.
Thank you, Ms. Picard. Mr. Abbott, Mr. Callahan. Mr. Abbott, you had your hand up first. Yes.
I just wanted to know the process that would get this to a building committee.
A building committee. Okay. Thank you.
Did we reiterate that?
Yeah, I heard you. Yes. Mr. Callahan, do you have yes, you have the floor.
Thanks. Hey, George, I don't know the exact mechanism as far as the transfer over to the building committee portion of it. My guess is that it would take place after a bond was approved to move forward, but I'm not sure. You'd have to double check that. I'm seeing a shake of head from
shaking of heads. I saw that.
Mr. Luzon. So, Craig, if you know when that transfers over, I don't.
So in theory, what would happen is if hypothetically everybody, 100% of us tonight are in favor of number 4. I don't even remember what number 4 is, but let's say we're all in favor of number 4, and we want to go with number 4, and we present it to the taxpayers at the district financial meeting. The taxpayers can vote on forming a building committee, and it's not based on the bond. Then we would have to now you have an established building committee, and then we'd have to fund that building committee, and then they would pursue the bonding and everything else that goes with that. But it's really up to the taxpayers. So
thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Okay, Chair, if I still have the floor.
Yes, Mr. Callahan, you have the floor.
All right, perfect. So we have Tracy and Andrew from RGB with us tonight, and I believe they're going to walk us through this updated presentation. To give folks online a little background of how we got to this point and a little bit of what we need to do going forward. I think all of you know, to maintain the existing infrastructure, we have to have capital projects. And so as we establish a capital plan, that comes into our budget and so on. With respect to brick and mortar, Rhode compensates or reimburses us a certain percentage of our capital. 61% is standard. We get an additional few percent because we're a regional district. A couple of years ago, the state put out a program which was called Newer and Fewer. And the idea behind that program was that rather than continue to reimburse for standard capital projects, they would incentivize districts to take a look or invest in newer and fewer buildings. And so what the school committee did is they created a subcommittee to explore what this newer and fewer meant and what the options were within our district. We have 8 schools in our district, 4 elementary schools, middle school, high school, alternative learning academy, and a career and tech center. So once the the Necessity for School Construction Committee was created, we engaged with RGB and we started to look at, really what was our existing infrastructure, what were our capital needs for our existing brick and mortar, and we had a number of engineering reports on that, and it came out to approximately $60 million. Our existing infrastructure, those 8 buildings, they have capital needs that are rapidly approaching the $60 million mark. Approximately 26 million of that is allocated to the 4 elementary schools. So we started to look at how we could invest in our community in a fiscally responsible way that allowed us to take advantage of these incentivized programs. Whereas if typically we are going to get 65% reimbursement, there are pathways to getting an 80% reimbursement. So we looked at that. Now, this school committee has met a couple of times on this topic. We have reviewed multiple options. There were originally 6, and the committee really kind of narrowed that down to 3 primary models. And tonight, RGB is going to walk us through those models. Now, in order to get to this position, I do want to comment on a couple of things. Not only did we look at the infrastructure and what our current brick and mortar needs were, but we also looked at the demographics of our community. What were the needs? Where were we going to, with respect to student population, how did it look for the next 10 years? And we hired a demographer who looked through each of the individual towns and did a professional assessment of that. And the projection we got is over the next 10 years, we're anticipating our district to remain effectively where it's at today. And that student body isn't going to shift dramatically down or up, although it may shift, say, geographically. If we see Charlestown decreasing, Hopkinton and Richmond are increasing to offset that. Anyway, so with that being said, what I would like to do, unless Ned, you have something to add, I'd like to turn the floor over to Tracy and Andrew.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is, of course, this has implications for how our budget looks, and you have a draft that captures a possible direction, but it dovetails with what Ryan just summarized for where we're at right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Ned. If Chair, with your permission, I'd like to hand the floor to RGB and ask them to walk us through the updated presentation that they sent out.
Yes, please. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Tracy, the floor is yours. Are you able to present?
Sure. We can share screen.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you see our screen to come through?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for having us this evening. And I just wanted to start by saying this is kind of a recap in some way of the presentation we've done before. But if there's any questions, if I go too fast, please let me know so we can stop and go through. The first series of slides is going to be kind of a quick overview. We'll get into more specific things as we go further along. But again, tonight is just information of the process that we've been going through over the last year or so. Mm-hmm. So first slide here is, as Ryan we just spoke to, we've gone through a process of looking at the demographics in the Chariho region and seeing where the increases may be, decreases may be. And just as Ryan spoke to, it looks like there's going to be, over the next 5 years, there's a potential for an increase. It's a slight increase. But relatively speaking, you're staying pretty constant, pretty sound. There's no significant drop and there's no overabundance of new students. But you have, it's a good amount, and so far you have the right spaces for it. The major focus of this looked to be at the the forecast at the elementary schools. Again, there's an increase, but then as that cohort ages, it matriculates through middle school into your high school. So hit on that quickly. We've gone through a series of sort of visioning process or looking to understand what is driving Charahoe schools. We've had a number of administrative interviews from all the elementary school principals, spoken to a number of teachers. We've looked at student surveys, teacher surveys, a series of sort of engagements to understand the disposition or the position of Charahoe schools. And we've also had a series of vision workshops we've held remotely, just like tonight. Again, just questioning different aspects of every program in terms of your overall vision, your security and technology needs, the school spaces, the environment that you currently have and how they might be bettered, improved, or are they working? Asking those types of questions. And then again, all of this information has been sort of shared and gone back and forth with the necessity for school construction committee. Every month we've been meeting and discussing kind of where this information and collected information has gone or led us. See if I can get to the next. These are some of from that workshop, that experience, that exposure. I've had some really interesting comments, and I just want to let you know as a community that it seems to be that Charahoe is very sound. I have so many comments from parents saying that their students are doing well, that Charahoe is providing them an excellent education. I really appreciated the comments from the students that we had in our workshops. The students that were part of these workshops are really articulate, had a lot of experience, a lot of great ideas, and were very positive about their experience in their education at Charahoe. So I like to say that just as an outsider in a sense, a lot of positive energy around your schools, from elementary schools all the way up into your high school. So these were some comments. I don't need to go through them all, so to speak, but it was really a great opportunity to go through and understand where the sentiments lie and where some of the communication seems to be effective. The engagement of the community, all of the communities and their students seem to be responding and reacting well to the school systems. So I don't want to dwell on that too much, but I just say good job. Some of the results of these experiences in terms of workshops and discussions, this kind of, it's not all of it, of course, it's kind of a real light hit, but this seemed to be one of the driving factors is that the education is personalized, the administration, the teachers, all are concerned and are hardworking about listening to the students, about listening to what they need and responding to those things. Some of the comments, especially at the elementary schools, were that it would be nice if we could have more spaces that were collaborative or allow larger groups of students, at least pre-COVID, to have more engagement, or have a larger community type space where you could have smaller group interactions and having opportunity for classes to be peers to one another, which is a form of blended learning, teaching, and working together. So that was some of the points that we came to. Collaborative spaces, multimedia spaces that could be strengthened. Looking to digital learning, of course, you were in a sense forced to do that. And what Jane was speaking to tonight was right in alignment with this in terms of your curriculum and where you want to go, what process you're going to try and establish. And so that's very exciting, and it falls right in line with the information that was sort of garnered from these experiences. So project priorities, in the physical space, the environment space of the schools, is there a way to look for extended learning places? Is there a way to improve or create or provide multimedia environments for more, from elementary school level all the way to the high school level? Explore blended learning, look for different flexible, adaptable, or furnishings that could be repositioned quickly and to serve different types of functions within classrooms. So cohesive, and a huge push was what's equitable throughout all the programs. How do the schools share? Do they have the same level of opportunity for students at all different levels? Whoops, sorry, I think I jumped one here. Then we went into a series of, what's that? Went to a series of options, going through and listening to, after reviewing the schools, looking at the spaces you currently have, listening to what alterations, what changes could be made. I believe we actually started with we came up with 8 different plan options that you might want to consider. And through that process, working with the necessity committee, we came up with 3 options that seemed to be viable potentially, and that needed to be, say, discussed or maybe explored further. Option A is an option where you're basically going to look to, or this concept is to keep your high school. In a sense, the campus works well. You're keeping the high school, you're keeping Charahoe Tech, and you're keeping the middle school all, in a sense, online, working together. There's no real potential for any type of increase or change in that building structure themselves. So there's some enhancements for life safety and for facility need, but no real need to consider a new building.
Or expansion.
Or expansion or significant renovation. There's always an opportunity for renovation, but we looked at, again, CALA, but this concept really came down to, could it be possible, would it be acceptable to take the 4 elementary schools and combine them, condense them into one program, one larger building, put on the campus or nearby on the campus, where the elementary and CALA and the high school are now. So you have, Charahoe has one regional campus where all your educational facilities are housed. Through that, there are 2 schemes that were brought up this evening, and last time we were looking for trying to find a site for this type of creation. There was only one opportunity off of, what's it called, O'Shea Lane. There's a piece of property directly behind the current campus now, behind the sports athletic field and track. That's about 70 acres. It is not, it's zoned residential, so it falls under the same classification as your current school site, which is residential, but being municipal, it would be allowed that you could build on that. Again, it's owned, privately owned at this time, so it would require a purchase of land to be able to build a new school. But these are 2 options to explore that. Consolidating all your elementaries into one program, you're looking at a school of about 200, maybe 200,000+ square feet, which is a large complex, but it would house pre-K, K, all the way to 5th. So the idea is that you're bringing 5th grade, removing that from the middle school and putting it into lower all the way up to 5th grade. So pre-K to 5, and leaving, or not leaving, allowing the middle school some room to expand if they needed so, but it would be 6th, 7th, and 8th. It's sort of a true middle school model, and then 9th through 12th in the high school. So I don't know. This is
There was just two potential options of how that school could be located on the site. One would be to come through below the middle school and have the new school share some parking and roads just south of the middle school. Second option was to locate it off of that O'Shea Road and also have some connection behind the field area. It's just two conceptual options. And then obviously if that land were not available, a third option would have to be to find an alternate site somewhere in the vicinity of the campus.
Yeah. Exploring this option a bit further, looking again at the concept of newer and fewer, the process that we'd have to go through with Rhode was that you'd have to look at what those components would be to make up a new elementary school. So looking at the demographic forecast, the number of students that would be enrolled, what's the scale of a space of this, a school of this type, how many teaching stations or core classrooms would be required for a kindergarten through fifth grade complex or facility. You go through a whole series of how many spaces you would need, a matrix, we call it a design matrix, with defining the spaces for support, for special education, for allied arts, core classrooms, and then breaking up, or the concept behind this would be breaking up each grade level to almost become its own neighborhood or its own learning community. So it has an identity to itself, and finding a way to design that into the complex. Because understanding as one large building, you still would want to break it down and make it more human in terms of scale.
Right. And that sense of community, concept of more of a school within a school, so that you're not just engulfed by a massive building.
Again, looking at a footprint range somewhere, more than likely, it would definitely be a multi-story, 2 to 3 stories in some location. But you're looking at 200,000 square feet to be able to account for the square footage that's required by Rhode to account for the students. So that's 145 square feet per student supporting a 600 plus student population. So this is some of the underlying sort of documentation to go through a process of considering this. This is another diagram trying to understand how core classrooms would be developed for 4th and 5th grade, 1st through 2nd, 3rd and 4th, what support spaces would need to be made. So it's called an adjacency diagram. It's not a plan per se, but it's how components should be associated to one another and how they're like components, almost pieces of a puzzle that would go into defining how a new elementary program would be laid out. Again, so what needs to be provided? This is just a listing of those spaces: classrooms, special services, extended learning or community spaces, maker spaces, library and media center. Where do teachers have a chance to work, to collaborate? Is there opportunity to create STEM, robotics, or science and STEAM supported at an early level? Allied arts, and again, physical education. Big component would be security and IT integration, and then even the chance to have outdoor spaces, outdoor classrooms, or larger spaces where multiple cohorts can come together. Maybe an auditorium, maybe just a large group space, but these are things to consider in the design of a new program. So then we go to option B, plan option B, which is basically, again, keeping Charahoe high, the tech, the middle school. Nothing really changes in terms of its relationship to option A or B, but what we're looking to do here would be to improve Ashaway, Charlestown, and Richmond so that each township has its own elementary school, maintains that. There'd be some additions required and some renovations required to be able to account for the repositioning or the number of students divided by closing Charlestown, not Charlestown. Sorry.
Charleston?
No, Hope Valley.
Hopkinton.
I was saying Hope, but it was Hope Valley. So again, looking at the number, I guess we haven't touched on this, but we're looking at a large number, but again, looking to what benefits or what's being offered right now in terms of reimbursement funding. You're basically Charahoe as a regional district, your standing right now is kind of fantastic in that you have the potential to get almost 80% reimbursement on any consolidation or newer and fewer project based on the current incentives that Rhode is offering. So that's something to really consider, to really be looking to. I'll say and then I want to go to this next. Option C was where basically we're looking at maintaining all your schools as you currently have, looking to what is required for health safety improvements, keeping your existing facilities online, and then what do they need as facility needs for maintaining them. This information comes through by our review and assessment engineering firm that we've done some report on, RGB has done, but also in comparison to the Jacobs report that was done a number of years back. So it's kind of comparing and contrasting what was done at that time. So option C really is about maintaining the programs you currently have and no educational enhancement per se, but just keeping your schools and facilities running warm, safe, and dry. This last slide, hopefully you can see it, is a comparison and contrast between option A, option B, and option C. Again, option A, you're looking at basically a cost to the district, if it was considered to move forward, about $23 million after reimbursement by Rhode. It allows you to have the most potential reimbursement in terms of newer and fewer and consolidation. It meets your health and safety across all school programs. It reduces your number of buildings, so there's some efficiency in that you would have 5 programs. You have your high school, the career and tech, the middle school, the alternative learning academy, and then one central campus centered oriented elementary program. 5th grade again would move from the elementary to the elementary from the middle school. So you have a true model of 6 through 8. There is some efficiency in that you would be turning or basically looking to potentially consolidate all your school programs onto one campus. So the elementary schools that you currently have would be taken offline, and there's efficiency in that in terms of just maintenance and ongoing repair and cost to run those facilities. You're looking at a potential ride reimbursement of about 15%. New construction of about 200,000 square feet. So that's option A. Option B, you're looking at about $11.5 million cost after reimbursement from Rhode. Incentives would be very similar. You'd still potentially get 15% overall for newer and fewer and health and safety, and any type of educational enhancement that you would be making at those programs. You're approximately looking at taking one elementary school offline, maintaining 3. So you would have a total of 7 schools that you would keep in place: high school, the career tech, middle school, alternative learning, and then you keep your main 3 schools at each township. Again, the idea would be to move 5th grade from the middle school into populating or repopulating your elementary schools. Upgrades to 3 elementary schools at each township so that each one has their own elementary program. Again, potentially 15% additional ride reimbursement. And you're looking at about 80,000 square feet, 78,000 square feet of new construction to amend or renovate or add on to those existing elementary schools. And then option C, you're looking at about a cost of $17 and $18 million to the district after some reimbursement. It's doing health and safety improvements to all the buildings. You're maintaining all your programs as you currently have. It does not include any type of educational enhancements, this cost. You're basically left with the buildings that you have. You do some health and safety improvements and facility needs, but you're looking at an average age of all your 8 buildings are somewhere in the range combined collectively of 57 years. It will require continual investment to maintain those, of course, older schools. And you would have very minimal construction in terms of no significant addition or renovation being proposed. So you're looking at about a 5% increase for reimbursement, just because it's health and safety. So that would reduce the potential. Instead of being 80%, you'd be at 65 plus 4, you'd be right at 70. So it'd be 10% less that you could get or you could expect to achieve by going with option C. So I know that's a lot of information, but that's kind of an overview of the process that we've been following. And I think that's, are there any questions or something you'd like me to go back over?
I see, George, you have your hand raised. Do you have a question, sir?
Yes, in terms of option A, have you considered the impact such a building would have on the sewerage and water systems?
Specifically, no. We would have to really, actually with any type of new construction, we have to do some site investigation in terms of the property for test pits and some borings for, the structure of a new facility. But we would also have to really look at what type of infrastructure you have in place for water, electricity. So that has not really been sorted out yet. This is still fairly high level. So
you're not aware of the fact that the sewage system is quite old, the septic system?
Okay.
George, were you speaking about a specific school about the sewer system?
Yeah, option A.
Option A would be a brand new school building.
I was asking the gentleman whether he's aware of the deficiencies in the current septic system.
No, the campus septic. Yeah.
Oh, campus. Okay.
Right. So that would definitely have to be, sorted out and reviewed, and any information we have on that would be useful in terms of trying to come up with a price to see what that type of investment you'd have to put into to accommodate a single school or to add to the load, your existing load, right? So no, that has not been sorted.
That could increase the total cost.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Stahl, you have your hand raised.
Thanks, Chair. Real quick question for, I think this is a question for RGB, the first question, and the second one I think is a question for our committee. But the first question is on the, with the hypothetical option A and the new consolidated elementary building.
Yeah.
There's the possibilities of staffing efficiencies and obviously the possibility of less maintenance and upkeep of multiple older buildings. I understand those in principle. I'm just curious if there's anything we have. I understand it would be general and it would be broad strokes right now, but is there a percentage? Is there a formula? Is there a rough idea, something that would give us numbers of over the next 10 years or 15 years of what those savings might be in the staffing efficiencies, meaning things that, less positions because things aren't duplicated, and the upkeep and maintenance on the older buildings versus the upkeep and maintenance on this newer facility? Are there numbers we can attach to those, even if they're just general? I'm not asking for terribly specific right now. The second question is more, I think, for our committee, but I understand, the arrangement now with the towns owning the building or property, but this, Charahoe handling upgrades and upkeep and maintenance and renovation and that sort of thing in the buildings. Who owns the new consolidated elementary building in a hypothetical option A? How does that town ownership translate to that plan?
Does anyone have, I don't have an answer to that, David. I don't know if anybody, Ryan, do you have an answer or?
So, well, the two questions, I don't have an answer to the second one. I think that's something that actually would have to be explored. But with respect to the first one, operational efficiencies, what happens when you become vertically integrated and potential savings? I don't think the committee has that fully scoped out. I know Ned had kind of looked at some of those things. I don't know, Ned, if you're comfortable commenting on that at this point, but I'd ask that you do so.
Sure. We had we had discussed the newer and fewer, and I don't know if everybody here was present when we had a conversation, and the committee was thoughtful about the impact to staff and management structure. So that was actually on the committee's mind a few options back, a few iterations back. But in that vein, you could put some scale to it and say if it was a couple of buses, that would be in the $125,000 to $150,000 range. And if it was 4 or 5 positions, which you would probably get to through attrition and efficiency, you could be in the $500,000 range. So that would give you an idea of some scale that you could put to it right away. I would say, practically speaking, between option A and option B, option A would also require some significant adjustment to the Charahoe Act, which of itself would have different tentacles. So we'd have to figure that into the upfront costs. It goes to that question about who owns the property. As we're configured now, we don't, and we pay a lease on the elementary side. So yeah, that's where we would need to make some determinations relative to time. I think time is a resource we need to talk about as well. I think as we look at it now, option B would probably fit within some of the time restrictions. So to your question, David, while those efficiencies could be gained, it would take us more time to get there. So there would be some design as well as some legal costs that we hadn't considered before if we went something of that scale.
Any other committee member have questions? I'm sorry. Mr. Day, thank you. Mr. Day, you have the floor. Thank you. Mr. Day, you need to unmute yourself. You're muted still.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I believe Mr. Lozano and I have probably been through 4 or 5 building proposals in our tenure on the school committee. I believe that option B probably has a small outside chance of being approved by the voters. Again, going back in the history of things there, we tried to consolidate everything on the Charahoe campus a number of years ago and turn the high school into a elementary school and hybrid type of situation. The problem you're going to have is that and I'm not criticizing Hopkinton, I'm just stating a fact. They're very protective of their two elementary schools. To ask them to move their elementary schools to outside of the town of Hopkinton, I think is going to be impossible. You may be able to get them to move to consolidate their elementary schools into one building, but I think option A is yeah, there's a lot of money out there, and it's the best project proposal as far as the money is concerned. But realistically, if unfortunately, there's a few of these school committee members really don't have a lot of history of Charahoe, and I think that if you're going to support things, I think you need really, and it's not a criticism, just you need to go back and find out what we tried to do in past billing proposals, and find out that this is not going to be something that I even think you're going to be able to accomplish in the time frame that is laid out here. I don't think you can do that by the 2022. It's just too much parochialism, ownership, or I don't know what the right word is, but I'm just I think there's some good proposals here, but B, I think, is probably the one that you have the best chance of getting the citizens of Charahoe to move on. And like I said, I just think that it's going to be a hard sell. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Day. Gary, you had your hand up. You have the floor. Where is he? Gary, would you like the hearing?
Yeah, sorry, my internet connection.
That's okay.
Anyway, I want to go back to David Stahl's point, which maybe was more conceptual than anything. It's hard to have the numbers he asked for, but I'd like to also look at it from another option, or look at option C. You know, that's a cost that's halfway between the other two costs, but what's not accounted for in there, it's just mentioned, is what's probably exponentially higher annual maintenance costs that come with that, or with doing nothing. So I like David's question. What are the efficiencies we gain? That's a critical question. But I think there's also the alternative way of looking at it is, what's the maintenance costs we know we're going to incur with buildings that average 57 years old? So I think they're both parts of a continuum that have to be considered, and at least in my opinion, they add up to the same equation, that doing nothing or doing option C is fiscally unsound.
Thank you, Gary. Any other committee member or have any questions?
Actually, I make a comment. Sorry.
That's okay.
And David too. We could get into discussion about building efficiency and with new systems and what it would take to say heat and cool and maintain a new building that's going to be far more efficient with a modern facility. But again, it's a large building we're talking about. So there's that level of say investigation to go into that, and then compare it back to what you're maintaining the buildings you currently have and the annual cost to keep them up and running. So that could be worked through. I don't have an immediate answer for that, what that cost is, and if that helps at all. We could figure out, a square footage cost relative to what you're experiencing now. Say with Jason's help, he knows what he's spending to maintain those buildings. So that could be factored into an equation to sort of compare the two.
Mr. Abbott?
Yes, would the building in concept A have a flat roof?
At this point, it's kind of, it's a diagram, but I would hopefully no, and not all of it. I don't yet have an idea of what it would look like. That really needs to be sort of designed. I do think one of the major factors is how do you break down the scale of the mass of a building like that when you think of the children, the age of the children, the students that come to it. You don't want to make it overpowering or imposing. So I think there's going to be, I would assume there'd be multiple levels and multiple roof types to change the perception of how large it would be. So that's more of a design question as you would go forward. But yeah, that is there a desire to not have flat roofs, or you had history with that, or I'm not sure.
Well, we've had trouble with the roofs at the main campus over the years.
Right.
Thank you, George. David Stahl, then Principal Joe, and then Robin Woodmansey. So, Mr. Stahl, you have the floor.
Thanks. I think this has been really helpful conversation, and just going back to Bill's point, which Bill, I appreciate your institutional knowledge, and the time that you spent, and the times that you've pitched this before, the experiences you've had before. It's there's a lot of insight there. The things I would say about that is, one, the district has changed. We've had a lot of people, a lot of turnover in people. New people have moved to the area, and that's somewhat evidenced by the board and by the representation in the school committee. I know that a lot of the voters are the same voters that have seen many proposals over the years, but there has been turnover, and the people in the district, the voters, have changed. And so I think it's worth kind of reassessing where is the current community at, and it may have changed in the last 10 years. And I also think sometimes as a committee, we need to be the ones who are kind of taking a bolder or bigger step, or coming up with ideas that are different than what they've heard before, or innovative in a new way. I think equity, in some ways, I think it's easier to sell the towns in the district on something that's completely new for all of them than something that's just new for one of them or for some of them. So Bill, I hear what you're saying about the ownership in Hopkinton of the two schools. I don't think you're wrong. But if everyone's doing something new and different and together, sometimes that's an easier leap. And the last thing I'd want to say is, I think it's part of our charge to come up with what's the best solution, and then figure out how to sell it, how to make it attractive to the voters and help them really see and understand it. And in our represented circles, how to sell it that way. So I'm not saying I know what the right option is. I'm just saying I think it's always worth considering, even when it didn't fly before. It's worth trying something and pitching something again, because the people have changed and the project may change.
Thank you, Mr. Stahl. Joe and Robin, I'm going to let Craig speak first, a committee member, and then it'll be Joe and then Robin. Craig, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I want to really echo what David and Gary have said, and specifically what Bill has said, and try to put a positive spin on it. We've got to do something, because the buildings are getting older. I mean, everybody looks at Charlestown as the relatively newer of the elementary schools, and half of that building was built in the 50s. So, I mean, we're going to have to address this sometime. It may be now, it may not be now. I agree. The most logical choice is A. I don't think politically it will fly. This is where I'm going to echo what Bill has been saying. B may fly, but what David just said, we all have to sell it. We all have to get on board, come to an agreement, and sell it. And it still may not pass, or it may pass with flying colors. So let me just throw something else in there, just to give people perspective. If you look at your budget, which is next on the agenda, but I'm not trying to deviate from the agenda. And if we look on operating budget with debt service, Okay. Campus 2010 was roughly $19 million. CALA was a little over 5. So let's just round it off and say that's $24 to $25 million we're paying on each year. Based on the agreement at the time, Richmond's paying about $280,000, Hopkins in about $280,000, Charlestown right now about $250,000. So folks, it's going to cost us, we're going to be adding that to the budget roughly every year. Can we live with that? And also at the time we did Campus 2010, we got some incredible interest rates, like 0.5%, which we're never going to see again. So I'm just throwing these numbers out there to at least let people realize this is what we're facing. Are we going to be on board and we think it's doable? I don't know. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Luzon. Joe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just one point and then one question. We have to remember that Richmond and Hope Valley are 14 years away from the 100th anniversary. 100-year-old buildings. That, you know, we're in 2021. We're 21st century learning. I mean, I just think personally, I mean, option A is I would you know, live, if I lived in Hopkinton, I'd go with that, obviously, because I think that in the long run is going to be what we need. But again, what Bill Day said, and is option B is probably the most likely that will be voted. So just a couple thoughts there. And then my question is, when does the town council get involved, and have they already been involved?
Ryan, can you address that?
Sure. So the town council, we shared our demographers report and so on, but we have not made like any type of pitch to the town councils. And one of the things that the necessity for school construction committee wanted to gain out of this is a sense of where the committee was at, and they have refined their position to where they're at today. And I kind of think I see where it's shaping up. But the next step is to fully get the town councils to, you know, understand what the options are, get their sense of it, and see what level of support they have, as well as starting to solicit, you know, input from parents, the PTOs and so on. Because we as a school committee are going to have to make a decision, and we're going to have to make that decision. I'm not going to put a line in the sand yet, but we can talk about that. We will have to make a decision on a path forward fairly soon.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan. Robin, I am going to give Catherine Ducey the floor. She's a school committee, and then you'll be next. I'm sorry, but Catherine, you have the floor.
Thank you. I wanted to echo a little bit of what Ryan just said. We need to get a sense, hopefully tonight, where this school committee wants to go in terms of these options. I think we can all see that option A probably is the most fiscally sound with all of the incentives that the state is going to offer to us. And if I had my way, I'd ask the state to put a pause on it for a year so we could get out of a pandemic before we had to decide what we were going to do. But that isn't an option. I think that I agree. I've heard some pushback from some people in Hopkinton that they really love to stay with their little village elementary schools, but they're expensive and they're falling down. And that's been my answer to them, that you can't tell me on the one hand that you do not want to see your taxes raised, but keep the same structure that keeps raising your taxes. And that's really where we're falling down. So I would love to see where the committee wants to go with one of these three options sooner rather than later, so that we can move forward with conversations with the town councils, get more community input to see what people want. I remember having this conversation with Barry when I first started as the parent liaison, and Barry, one of Barry's favorite lines was, the community will decide what kind of schools they want to have. And so I think I'm urging the committee to kind of try to narrow down our position soon so that we can then move forward. I feel like we've had this discussion a couple of times already, so some direction would be great so we can then move forward to the community at large. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Robin, you have the floor. Thank you for waiting. I think there's somebody else. Robin? And George, you're next.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Thank you. No problem waiting. I'm happy to wait for them all. I just wanted to kind of give the community kind of standpoint and my views on it. I do agree that our community has changed greatly over the last 20 years. So our viewpoints have changed, and we've been able to pass a lot of budgets we didn't think we could pass, and the community has really changed in its views of our Terre Haute school system. So I've also heard a lot of committee members, say, you know, A is probably the best option, and I would just like everyone to kind of reflect on that. Like, if A is truly the best option for our community, then, you know, I think we should be putting forth what we feel is best. I feel many residents are well aware that our buildings are not in good condition, and they're going to continue to get worse and worse. And it kind of makes more sense now to stop repairing the old car that we love dearly, and it's time to trade it in and, you know, get something new. I do understand the hard areas with that, with who's going to own the building, et cetera, but I am hopeful that as a community we can do that. Also, another point is something that residents have been saying time and time again at budget time is that they would like to see a leaner administration. Not that I would ever want to see that, but I do think that's something that will occur with us all on one campus, with 4 elementary schools going into 1. So there might be a selling point on that as well. But I just want us to all kind of keep in mind not only what will pass, but what is really truly best. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. George Abbott, you have the floor, then Ryan.
This is a question for the superintendent. In reading Education Week and other publications, I was under the impression that national trends are leaning towards neighborhood schools, and that kids generally do better in neighborhood schools as opposed to factory schools, as you know, massive buildings and things of that nature.
So actually, you're partially correct, George. So one of the conversations have been what they call smaller communities. So what they've done with larger schools that have over 1,000 students is create environments where they don't look large, but they're very much driven by small pods, if you will. So for an example, you know, one of the conversations you heard tonight with RGB was thinking about our neighborhoods as grade levels and other opportunities if and when the committee decides with option A is really to think about that equity lens and the academy options that we could have. So our 4 elementary schools, as an example, have themes. But right now, if I want the health and wellness theme and I don't live in Richmond, I don't have access to that. So one of the things that we could do is really think through our vision of what teaching and learning looks like, and allow our elementary school vision to be thinking through what does that look like. So I, as a new kindergarten or pre-K student, may opt into the Drama and Theater Academy, has that pre-K through 5 lens. And again, this is just an example. This is not hard, but then it gives us an idea of a smaller community embedded in a larger building. So we would design the building. What you don't want to do is you don't want to think about the schools you see today. And I really would, and now it's difficult now with the pandemic, but really think through how we could visit even virtually some of the newer models of what our facilities look like in education that have been recently built, because there are a lot of opportunities for us to be thoughtful about how to really enhance a large elementary school that really does not look imposing on our families and our community, because it's designed in a way that's mindful of that small in-school approach. The efficiencies, to David Stoll and Gary Ligori's point, is really like, thinking through your busing transportation, and you want to think through what that looks like, administrative, clerical, all these things could come together, custodial. But I do think that I wouldn't push off option A if you're worried about it being imposing, as long as we're thoughtful that the vision of teaching and learning should lead the design of the brick and mortar and not vice versa.
I'm under the impression that a sense of place is very important to children's development, and that having a neighborhood school, notwithstanding that you're trying to duplicate that at the main campus, is important to a child's identity and sense of place.
Right, and you would have to really be mindful of a design that would ensure that we would be considerate of those things.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Gina. Ryan Callahan, you have the floor.
Thanks, Chair. So I just want to let the committee know I'm strongly in favor of moving forward with option A. I think that option C has, it's an aging infrastructure, and option C actually happens organically because we have to have capital plans. We have to spend money on our existing infrastructure. So option C is going to happen. That is the do nothing option. Option B, I don't like, just simply because even though it looks like it has a lower upfront cost, anybody who's worked on an old truck or an old house or an old anything knows that there's going to be problems with it. It doesn't change the fact that you're still performing additions on buildings that are, approaching, 86 years for Richmond and 67 for Charlestown, and Ashway's at 53. So I don't like option B for that reason. I like option A. I would recommend to the committee that we engage the town councils and see where they're at on option A. We engage the PTOs in the community to see where they're at on it. And then circle back and find ways to make a formal vote on the path forward. So that's what I have to say on that. Thanks, Chair.
Ryan, David, I know you have your hand up. Brian, I have a question for you, just so I know what our task is today. Do you want us to, as a committee, vote to have you go and present option A to the town? Do we need to vote for that, or do you want to get some sort of head count or an official vote? Like, do you want to make a motion and we can vote on it?
Yeah, I don't know if
your goal is.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think a general consensus of the committee. I don't think I need a formal vote.
Okay.
There's nothing that prohibits me from going to the towns to see what they are in favor of, but because there's no formal action that takes place with it. It's just soliciting feedback.
I just wanted to know what your goal was for this evening, and so I understand that now. David Stahl,
Right.
then Michael Waterman, and then George. You have your hand up.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
David, you have the floor.
Ryan and Catherine and others are kind of asking us to really maybe more directly or overtly indicate where we are. I like option A as well.
Okay.
And I would want to move in that direction, and I'm right on board with option A. I do think that the committee, the subcommittee, should go and present this to the towns, present all of these options to the towns, just as this simplified comparison spreadsheet is laid out. I think that should be presented to the towns. And I would also like to see, sort of like we did with the distance learning, the virtual learning options, the in-person options, it would be very helpful for me, and we have the mechanisms to do it quite easily and very quickly get responses, to just poll the entire school community before asking the towns for their opinions, before asking anyone else for their opinions. We as a school committee can say, let's ask everyone. And let's have the superintendent send out a poll, just like she did for here are the virtual options. How many would opt for something like this if it was there? How many would? They're not taking a vote. you're simply asking for a poll. You're looking for what's the temperature? What would people be interested in? So I'd be in favor of immediately polling the entire school community with just a hypothetical, here's some options we're thinking about. What kind of things would you be open to? Like we did with the learning options immediately, and continue with the other presentations to towns and that sort of thing. But it would give us an indicator.
Thank you, David. Excellent comments. Mr. Waterman, Michael Waterman, you have the floor. Yeah, okay. Got you. I got you, Craig. Okay, and George.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for this time. I do have a couple concerns, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about potentially up to 1,500 elementary students in one building. I do have concerns with that many young children in one campus. But I'm also curious if at any part there was any traffic study done with this, because as someone who drops their child off at the middle school at drop-off time, I'm sometimes faced with a 15-minute wait to enter the campus. So I'm also concerned about what the impact would be for arrival times.
Thank you. So traffic study, and you're concerned about the large campus. Thank you very much. George and then Craig.
When Ryan presents to the town councils, I wouldn't want him to give the impression that we as a school committee approve of Plan A or favor Plan A. I think all three plans should deserve equal consideration.
Okay, thank you, George. Mr. Luzon, you have the floor. Where are you, Craig? Okay, there you are.
I will let Ryan respond to that first.
Okay, thank you. Ryan?
Oh, yeah, thanks. Hey, George, I totally agree. And I think that's the spirit of it. This, it's to solicit, honest feedback. So you can't do that if you obscure options. So I totally agree with your comment.
Thank you, Ryan. Craig?
So I agree with what David said, but as far as the survey goes, I would try to at least make it open to all taxpayers in the district, not just people that are already on the Charahoe district computer site where they can do a survey. And this is going to be a political fight, because I know there's apprehensions in Charlestown on a one big giant school because of, and we can discuss this in the future, why. Because it has past history involved and why they're reluctant on doing something of this nature. So this is going to have to be a sale to all three town councils, because believe it or not, folks, it is a political fight. So, and it's going to be the political will of who can move it. So I agree with what David said, but I also agree with what Ryan has said, which A is the most logical option. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Luzon. Sheila, you have your hand up. You'd like to speak?
Yes, I'm in agreement that we should be seeking the opinion of the taxpayers sooner rather than later. I think that definitely it will give us a better chance of getting something through, because people, I think, tend to feel that they're having things forced on them. So I think it'd be better to have all three options, while we're still figuring that part out. And I definitely feel like, if we feel option A is the best option, and I definitely feel it's the best option, that we should be getting all ammunition to back that up, which would be, working out over the next 10 years, what would be saved, etc. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Sheila. Thanks for that. Craig, you have the floor.
I have one more question. RGB, on the bottom of this, it says if projects do not commence by December 2022. Can you at least elaborate what that implies? Does that imply just a shovel going into the ground by November 30th of 2022? Or does that imply that we have to have a certificate of occupancy?
Okay, Craig. So sorry, but it means, well, pre-COVID, it meant that work had to be ready to move forward, like ready to move into a shovel in the ground, but no certificate of occupancy. So in other words, the plan has to be placed in place to move forward. But now with this year sort of slowdown, there has been some discussion, at least I've overheard, with Rhode that they may be able to push that a bit, but they have not made a decision on that. So as of right now, we're keeping it as mandated, that it was December of 22 is when this ends. So
and to follow up with that, if the chair allowed to be on every meeting that we had as a subcommittee, but has anything changed with the state financially that would impact what we're discussing right now?
No, not that I've heard. Again, I've had the meetings just recently listening with Christine Lopes Metcalf, and she said that as of right now, the Department of Education, everything is still on hold, are still in place to support any approved project under that $250 million bond that they have. They don't believe that it'll be reinstated. They don't see that it might, but it's not going to go away. So they're holding fast to.
All right, thank you very much.
Bill Day, you have the floor, then Mr. Abbott.
Yes, I think that, again, I would support a proposal that the committee adopts, but I think there's a lot of elderly people in these three towns. They vote. A lot of the newer people in town, they're not even registered to vote, even though they have kids in the school system. To rely on the Charahoe community as it pertains to the school district to find out what they want, I think is very misguided. You need to get into the senior centers in the communities and find out what they're going to do, because they're the ones that are going to be paying the taxes for kids that they don't even have in their schools. And we've heard this many times in other proposals that we've had. You need to include everybody and make sure you include everybody. And I think that we're making a mistake by going out and telling the community that I am the leader of this subcommittee, and I favor option A. I think this has already put some people in a very negative light. We need to show some neutralism and partiality, whatever word you want to use, so that the people will believe that we are trying to do the best for them and not to move our own personal agenda. Thank you.
Excuse me, Chair.
Just one sec, Donna, George had his hand up before you.
I know that,
Oh.
and I will, 1 second.
Okay.
And I know George will speak next, but I would like to go after George. I am not capable of raising my hand, and
I'm
it's not
sorry.
being
I've been sort of
acknowledged.
going through and, okay, please,
Okay.
you haven't had a chance to speak, so you go right ahead and then George.
No, please, George, go ahead, but I would like to speak, and
No, go
for
ahead,
some
Dawn.
reason, I can't raise my hand.
I'm sorry.
Go right ahead.
He says you can go right ahead. Go ahead. Thank you,
Oh, okay.
George.
All right. I just want to make a very quick point that I do not want to give the impression that option A is going to reduce the administration of our elementary schools. We have 4 extremely competent and cooperative principals, and the work has to be done. So they may not be called principals, but the work has to be done and the children have to be served, and we will need every bit of their expertise to make option A work. So I don't want to give the impression, especially to the community, that option A means that we're only going to have 1 principal at this humongous school. So that's my point. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Donna, thank you. George?
Yes. I just believe that a lot of these issues and concerns could be best addressed by forming a building committee. I mean,
Oh,
some
yeah.
of these issues were raised at the building committee for the 2010 project, which I was a participant in. And a lot of similar questions and issues came up with that. So that's how I feel.
Yeah, I think, George, at some point, there is going to be a building committee. I just don't think we're at that point yet. There will be a building committee at some point. I think that's part of the charter, the Charahoe charter. Catherine, you have your hand up.
I do, and this will be my final comment.
That's
I
okay.
just wanted to say, we didn't think a new Cala building was ever going to be built, but that was built. And that committee worked really hard and was very vocal about the need for that building. So, I don't think the goal is to disenfranchise anybody here, but I do think that if we're going to be on a committee, that we need to let it be known which way we're leaning. Which doesn't mean we're gonna stop listening to others, but I do think it's important that the community knows how we feel and why we feel that way. So thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Chair, can I speak?
McAllister, you go right ahead. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I had trouble raising my hand.
No, I know. I've been sort of flipping through everybody's pictures and trying to catch people, so I apologize.
Right.
But Ms. McAllister, you have the floor.
Just several points. I absolutely agree with Donna that we don't want to send out a message that our administrators would be lessened or we wouldn't need their expertise. So that's one very important point. The other is going to the towns for their input, I think is very important, and showing them the three options and giving the pros and cons for each one. Will be very helpful information for us. And also going to the community, the larger community, will tell us what families are looking for. So I think that information will be very important as we move forward with this. I think for me, it's not just for me, I think for Charahoe, we have to think about our vision and where we're going and where education is going in the next 10, 20 years. And our buildings now can't sustain what's going to be expected of us in the future. So I think we need to think, somebody said this before, we need to think where we want Charahoe to go and how we can get there. And our facilities is what is going to help us get there. And a large school, this is just a little side information. I was principal of a large, well, it was large for New Hampshire. It had almost 550 kids in it and one principal. But it was built on a village concept so that each grade level was housed in a village, and it had a very small town feel to it. It was a wonderful facility. And you could come together in larger groups, and the older communities supported the younger communities. It's possible to do in a big school to make it have that small town feel. So just a little bit of side info. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did I say I was going for option A? That I think that's our best option?
It sounded like you were leaning that way, yes.
I am leaning that way. Thank you.
You're welcome. George, I know you have your hand up. I would like, if anyone else has their hand up, an opportunity to speak. Okay, I guess, George, you have the floor.
I really hate to bring this up, but another thing to consider is many of these schools shootings take place in massive schools. So I just think we should keep that in consideration also.
Oh, well, I would think, though, that the school would have a state-of-the-art emergency, and everything would be, they'd have cameras and state-of-the-art doors and emergency stuff. I was waiting to weigh in. I'm leaning towards option A too. I also had an experience of working in a large school that was separated by, actually we called them schoolhouses instead of villages or communities. And it was the best time of my life that I worked in this building. And you can create that sense of community in a larger building. You just have to be systematic and very strategic about it. That's all. But I Ryan, I don't think anyone else has any other comments. Do you have the information that you need to move forward with your committee at this point?
I do, Chair. Thank you. I think, and I see Andrew's hand popping up, but
Oh, I'm sorry,
our next objective is to work and get a poll out to the community. I think that's a fantastic idea. I think that allows us to start that feedback loop. And then we'll start to coordinate meetings with town councils and other community organizations to find ways to solicit feedback on the 3 options that the committee reviewed today.
Andrew, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just wanted to say that it's a perfect, the communication that's going on right now is exactly what you need to do. We need to have communication with your community. And as Mr. Day said, I'd be fantastic to get out to, or to reach out digitally, however we can, to the elderly in the community. We need to hear from parents, teachers, people, all residents, as many as we can. And it's tough to do right now, but I think it's great. It's just the communication that's going on right now. It's so many good ideas, different positions. And the more you talk about it and the more the community can understand it, I think you're going to come to a closer to a consensus. You're never going to arrive to one, but I think it's very interesting, the ideas that are already coming to light. So I would love to support that, to investigate the work, to see how we could broadcast the idea of having community workshops, having you be members in that discussion, I think is very powerful. So maybe it's already obvious, but it makes me actually excited to hear and listen and get the experience and think about the future. So I know Greg lived through it with his groups, but we need to broaden that survey and that community response. So that's really all I had.
Thank you, Andrew. I think we are, if there's no other hand raised or, oops, did I just see one? Nope, no, I thought that was Mr. Stahl. I think that we can close letter C. Thank you all. That was an awesome discussion. And like Andrew said, I think there were a lot of great ideas and comments. Thank you so much. On to letter D, which was school committee compensation, which was requested by Donna Chambers. Donna, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
I really only put this on this agenda because I thought John was going to weigh in on it. My understanding was that when we voted to not be compensated in order, as school committee members, in order to reduce the budget, that we were told at that time that it was somewhat of a mistake because it would take practically an act of Congress to get it reinstated, and that those that voted it down could not ethically vote it back in. So I don't really care, but I will abstain with any vote about anything to do with compensation for school committee members. Has anyone talked to John about this? Because he seemed to be the one that said it's an ethical issue. And that's why we put it off to talk about today, this meeting, anyway.
Okay.
Okay, I raised my hand here.
Yes, Donna.
I believe, for my take on all of this, I was talking to Ned today. I think the reason why he wanted this put back on is I don't think he would advise the committee to vote how to be compensated. It had nothing to do with the fact that you did get it reinstated, because we waited till after the election. All the members are new, have been reelected, I should say. So that was fine, but I think the thing he was concerned with is that you would take another vote on how to be compensated. That I don't believe you can do. You shouldn't vote on any compensation for yourself.
Okay, okay.
I
Thank
believe
you,
that
Donna.
is
That
the
makes
concern.
Donna, that makes perfect sense then. Yeah.
Okay. So there's, okay, Mr. Day, go ahead. You have the floor.
As I understand it, the administration is going to make a decision on when and if this compensation gets out there. end of story, right?
You mean the school-based administration?
Well, we
Yeah.
can do it, so if we're gonna be compensated, then it's not up to us, it's up to Ned and
Gina.
Gina or whatever, and, you know, if someone chooses not to take the money, that's
That's their
their
choice.
privilege, you know?
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay, good point, Mr. Day. Mr. Draper or Ms. Picard, is that your understanding also at this point?
I will double check with John, but I believe that, choosing the best course of action is probably going to be what's the most cleanest way to do it within the budget. So it looks from year to year.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Donna. So there's no vote, nothing. We're done with this item, so we can move on to the next item.
Okay.
Item E, which is the FY22 budget. And so this is our opportunity as a group to ask questions, make some recommendations, if you have any clarifications. Ned's here, Gina's here. They can answer your questions as far as the budget. Does anyone have any? Yes, Donna.
I looked over briefly. I didn't go into a lot of detail on Sharon Davis's recommendations that she submitted to us recently. It seemed to me that she just cut service items, just to cut. I don't know the rationale. I would have to hear her suggestion on where she thinks going from 5,000 to 1,000 is going to make a difference in that particular line item. So it's not, she was cutting dollars and not necessarily things that are within that line item. I'm very confused by it. So otherwise, that's it. Anyway, so if she could explain herself a little better on her recommendations, I think I could consider them more. So
okay, thank you, Donna. Gina?
Donna, great question. I did reach back out and ask the very same question so I could provide. So I haven't heard back yet. Maybe she will provide some clarification tomorrow. But if and when I get it, I will share it.
Thank you. Thank you, Gina.
Yes, Ned.
So I did have one item I'd like to recommend for school committee action if possible.
Okay.
After the last meeting, we went through the tuitions because we had a lot of conversation about enrollment. And one of the things we verified is it looks like the number and mix of students through the CALA program will be able to yield an additional $46,000 based on what we expect for next year. So if the committee is comfortable with increasing the tuition, we would go from, this is in section 5 of your budget books, row 19. We would go from 146,630 and increase that by 46,000. So that'd be 192,630.
Okay, thank you. So the hands, we have David Stahl, Craig Guzon, and then Ryan. David, you have the floor. Thank you, Ned. Oh, I saw you too, Bill. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, just wanted to comment on Donna Chambers' comment. I looked at Sharon's request the same way, and Sharon or anyone else that submits them. My questions were, when we see those, we don't know if they've had conversation with Gina or Ned, if they've walked through those things, or if they're comparing that saying just based on what was used last year, or if they're looking at that saying, I talked to somebody and I don't believe in this program at all, or I know we have 3, we're doing 30 hours of this and we could get away with 8 and I think it'd be fine. I have no idea of the merit of each one of those. So in case she goes back to listen to this, Sharon's one of our Hopkinton town board members. So I certainly want to listen to what she's saying and hear it, but I'm going to need lots more input, and the same from anyone else that says, I'd like to see this come off here or here. I need to know if they've already talked to Gina or Ned about that when I see those proposals come. And if not, I'd just like to sit with them and understand what their rationale was. So she had a lot of cuts, and I'm not against cuts. I kind of like cuts if I know what they're for.
Thank you, David. I think it was Ryan, then Craig, if I'm correct. Ryan, nope, Craig, yeah, okay, Ryan, then Craig, then Bill Day had his hand up. Ryan, you have the floor.
Yeah, no, I have a feeling that Craig and I are on the same page here. Chair, I make a motion to increase the revenue line in section 5, row 19 of 146,630 by 46,000.
There's been a motion. Is there a second? Thank you, Craig. The motion by Ryan Callahan, a second by Craig Luzon. Is any discussion with regards to increasing the tuition? Yes, Mr. Luzon?
Ned,
Yes.
is that for 2 students?
We expect it'll probably be 1 student.
Oh.
Based on the type of need.
Okay, so, okay, that's interesting. In the future, I mean, is the cost per student based on their needs, or is there a set cost per body?
There's actually two variations in program, so it depends on which program they're enrolled in.
Okay, that I can read between the lines there. Okay, because all this information we've really never been given in the past. I find it interesting. And this is not bumping out any Charahoe students, correct? This was an available slot.
This is out of district, correct? Yeah,
Yes.
The capacity's there.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Luzon. Mr. Day, you had your hand raised. You have the floor.
Yes, I have a lot of concerns about this capital expenditure budget.
Mr. Day, we're speaking right now about the tuition that's on the floor right now. That's the discussion about the increase in the tuition. Can we go back? Can I go back to your capital budget question in a sec?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So we're in discussion about the increase in the tuition. So does anyone else have any comments or questions for that motion? I'd like to put it to vote. I don't see anything. Okay, so there's been a motion and a second to increase the tuition at Cala by 46. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. It's going to raise the tuition so that the increase is $46,000. Those in favor? I probably said that. Okay. Any opposed? Opposition? I don't see. No. Okay, please shout out if I can't see your hand raised. Any recusals or abstentions? Okay, so the motion has passed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ned. Thank you, Ryan, for making that motion. Okay, Mr. Day, you have the floor about the capital budget. You wanted to ask some questions about that.
Yes. I talked to the fire chief and the fire marshal. And there's so many of them here that I'll just touch on a few of these because I think we need to, my opinion is, depending on the kind of answers I get here tonight, if I can get any, need to rethink some of this stuff. There's an item at Hope Valley School, $98,700, upgrade fire alarm system to voice activate. They have no knowledge of any reason why this needs to be done. And I think this is the wrong way to deal with fire issues without consulting the fire department for their input. I mean, there's another item here, install dry sprinkler system at roof. These to me, I need more clarification is why we want to spend this kind of money on a building that newer and fewer may put out of service in a year or two. And it goes to the other point that I want to make. There's so many things here, hold if newer and fewer. Well, how can we pass this? How can we put this in our budget if we don't know what newer and fewer is going to be doing? There's a lot of money here that we don't have to ask the taxpayers to pay for if there's going to be no need for it. So I'd like, if anybody could just give me a clarification as to upgrading the fire alarm system. I understand there's a little problem with the panel down there, but not for $98,000.
Yes, Ned, please, you have the floor.
Sure, I'll let Andrew speak to the particulars on the fire alarm. In general, I'll start at the general, Mr. Day, and then narrow down to the fire alarm and some of the other concerns that were also expressed. So this is set up as a draft in the absence of having a confirmed plan, because right now we're still at the development stage. But I had to put something before you that addresses our capital needs. So right now, we're working off a 5-year capital plan based on just capital and asset preservation. Because in the absence of having anything, we wouldn't be addressing some of the high-end needs. So you have a list here of those that we're aware of. I'll let Andrew speak to the pricing they applied, particularly some of the issues you had raised. Also, I believe Ron Bryant and committee member Callahan had all pointed out some different concerns with his presentation before you. But those newer and fewer could potentially go away, but we need to make a decision soon to say, okay, if that's the path we're going to go down, then we know we can defer these for a year or two. If we're not going to, though, however, we're going to have to accommodate them. That said, if Andrew could engage for questions on some of those costs, that'd be great.
Yes, so actually that was one of the questions. So Mr. Day, that number came from our electrical engineer just reviewing the building and assuming that it should be changed or upgraded. But when I called and spoke with him today, he said, in the end, the AHJ, the authority having jurisdiction, which would be your local fire marshal, if they don't see the need for that fire alarm to be upgraded, then basically this cost is either significantly lower, depending on what they suggest we change, or it's not incurred at all. So really what that means is we need to get out and talk to them and see what they would accept. If they don't have an issue with it, then that number goes away. If they do have a concern with it, then we need to understand to what level and adapt, the number accordingly. I don't have anything specifically on the dry sprinkler system, except typically that's where it's someplace that's cold that could freeze and burst if you have a wet system. So I know it is more expensive to have a dry sprinkler system installed, and I know that it's a limited area. That's really the only thing I know about on that item. So again, I could question that further and get some more information on that item.
Well, if I could, I've got over 50 years of experience with firefighting, all as a volunteer, but I know what a dry system is.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm asking a question. And if someone is telling me to spend $15,000 on a dry system at the roof, I would expect them to be able to tell me why they think we should be spending $15,000 on a dry system. Because like I said, I have over 50 years of volunteer firefighting service in this community. So I'm not trying to be a smart ass in plain English, but to come up and propose things is very disconcerting to me if the answers are not there. I would, if I could, I'm looking at option C here, and you have some pictures of things that you're pointing out.
Mr. Day, we've kind of concluded that conversation. Does this have to do with the budget?
Yes, it does.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that we stay on topic.
What I'm saying here is I have pictures of things that they've identified that need to be done, and the only thing that in this capital budget that is being proposed is fixing the windows at the middle school. It doesn't address the Ashaway gas foil boiler system that's at Ashaway.
Right, but the different options, and if I'm
I have got the floor, ma'am.
I'm sorry, sir.
If I can't speak, then I'll leave this meeting.
Nope, you have the floor. I apologize.
Run it.
I apologize.
My question is, in this capital plan, to the people who drew this capital plan, why didn't why didn't they identify the gas file boiler at Ashaway School that's reached its life expectancy and needs a replacement? It's not in the capital plan. I think this capital plan needs to be reworked completely to the point where they can come up with something that I can feel comfortable and the community can feel comfortable with. I spend time researching this stuff. And when I ask questions, it's either I know the answer or I want to know the answer. So I'm going to shut up right now because I'm upsetting people, but I'm more upset about this than I should be.
Well, we don't want you to be upset, Mr. Day. You're not upsetting people. So yes, Ryan, you have your hand raised. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thanks, Chair. I think that at the next budget workshop, Ned, we should probably spend some time going through. Capital is always a big section in the budget. And if there's questions about it, I think we should probably get a walkthrough on how the line items were assigned and where they came from and get a little bit more justification for them. So I'd encourage you to be prepared next week for our budget workshop. I don't have any budget questions tonight. I'm going to hold them. I do want to ask that you add to your preparation for the next budget workshop. I received an email from the Richmond Town Clerk. I believe you were, I don't know if you were copied, sorry. I know Gina was,
Yes.
But what they're asking is they voted unanimously on January 5th to ask the school committee for an update on our plan for the grounds maintenance and repair at Richmond Elementary School. And they respectfully request these repairs to be added to the fiscal year 21-22 budget. So I'd like your assessment of that, either at the next budget workshop, or if that's too soon, the one thereafter. Thank you.
Yes, Ned.
Just one, because I have not seen that memo yet. So when they're saying the grounds maintenance, is that in regards to the courts, tennis court and basketball court?
I'm not 100% certain. It's not spelled out in the letter. I just think it's going to require a follow-up. So
yeah, oh yeah, I'll follow up for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Ryan, I did that. I think Donna included that. If it's a same letter, I think it's included in an FYI packet in the packet under FYI. Did we, Donna? Did we not include that letter? Oh, I don't know.
Yes, the letter is included. It's at the bottom of your packet documents page.
Right.
I included it at the bottom. It just came in late today. And I do believe they're referencing the work that we were going to go out for the grant for, but didn't get.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Does any other committee member have any comments with regards to the FY22 budget at this point? Any community member have any comment or question at this point?
Chair George has a hand up.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Stahl. Mr. Abbott, you have the floor.
Yes, just to clarify, we're not voting on the budget as it is to approve the spending that's listed in the budget.
Not tonight, not this evening.
Okay, but what are we doing? We're just moving it forward, or?
Well, that's what we're asking. Do you have any line items or anything that you would like us to consider to look at, to change, to amend, to cut?
No, but I wouldn't want to rule out further action on this.
No, we're fine. We still have quite a bit of work to do before we
That's
get
what I
to
want
that.
to clarify.
Yes. The only thing we did with regards to the budget was that tuition increase that we did. That was the only thing we did that we voted on.
I'll vote to approve it, but or move it.
No, yeah, we did. We
Okay.
did. Yeah, so that's the only thing we did with regards to the budget tonight. Okay. Anyone else have any comments or questions? Doesn't look like it. So I will now close letter E, I believe that is, in business. And let me see. I lost my agenda. Okay, so now we're at consent agenda, right? I believe consent agenda items. Does anyone need anything pulled?
I assume, Chair, that we need to pull A1 and A2.
Yes, sir. Thank you for minutes. Anything else that needs to be pulled for further discussion? There's no donations. Okay, so
Seeing there's none, Madam Chair, I make a motion to move the remainder.
thank you. There's been a motion to, and Ryan second that motion. Thank you. Any discussion with regards to those consent agenda items? No. Okay. Let's take a vote. Yep, thank you. I'm losing my, okay. That looks like any nays, nope, recusals, abstentions. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we need to.
Madam Chair?
approve the minutes. Yes, Craig.
I make a motion to approve A1, the executive session minutes of December 15th, 2020.
There's been a motion and a second by Ryan Callahan to approve those executive session minutes of November 10th, 2020.
Which
Any
I want to word this right, which
Okay.
are the approval of executive session minutes
Session minutes,
of November 10th, 2020.
minutes not sealed. Thank you. Any discussion on those minutes? Okay, we'll go to a vote. Those are in favor? Okay, any opposed? Recusals, abstentions, that maybe they weren't there. Oh, I see that's also a unanimous vote with the committees that are in session.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry for pulling these. I thought some people were not at the meeting, but
Yeah, that's
so-
okay.
so I make a motion to approve A2, the regular session minutes of December 15th, 2020.
There's been a motion by Mr. Luzon, a second by Mr. Callahan. Any discussion with regards to those minutes of December 15th, 2020? Doesn't appear to be. Those in favor? Oh, David, you have your hand raised, or that was a favor? Okay, sorry. Okay, any nays or abstentions or recusals? I don't see any. Okay, so that also was a unanimous vote. Thank you, Mr. Luzon. Okay, consent agenda items are complete. Now we move on to reports.
So we have the Anti-Racism Task Force met on January 6th. There's a copy of the approved minutes on December 2nd. We are, just like any other committee, we are posting those minutes on our website. We are also working to get the recorded meetings posted as well. I have a little glitch with one meeting that Eric's going to assist me with tomorrow because I'm only finding audio, but I'm sure we'll figure it out. But anything that we can post on the website, we will be doing that. So any member of the committee or any member of the community can watch those as well. As we're also, so for my superintendent's report, Chair, is it okay to move on?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So the review, the concurrent learning plan, as you all know, we went back to in-person learning on Monday. And a lot of great feedback from families, a lot of elementary school parents chomping at the bit to return to the Monday. As we all know, it can be challenging distance learning. While some prefer it, some parents who have 3 little ones, not as easy sometimes. So we're glad that we can continue to offer both options to our families. We are continuing to allow families that are not feeling up to coming back right away based on the state uptick to continue to move to distance learning for the month of January. We will be, as you know, we've already asked for registration for quarter 2 and 3 for the middle school and high school. So we will be posting right around the progress report time for high school. We will be asking for registrations for quarter 4 around that time during quarter 3. So the only other sort of move forward for us after the new year was our planning for asymptomatic testing at the school sites. So there have been 3 or 4 pilots across the state prior to the winter break. The closest one to us being South Kingstown. Craig McKenzie and myself visited their site on Monday to begin to observe as we're preparing to pilot ourselves at a very small scale, with our first round being focused on our high school staff, high school and Cala staff, and our high school students. The reason behind that being, one, it's the one place where we have our most number of cases, as well as they're not stable pods as we have in the middle school and elementary. And that's, again, that's where our data shows that we have a need. We also know that moving into winter athletics has a higher risk coming off the break. As we know, especially our older students, they have jobs, they see smaller communities, so they have, there's more ability to be around people outside of your household. So we will be implementing, and we are already implemented, required weekly testing, but we're hoping by taking on the Buy Next Now opportunity, it will alleviate parents having to go off-site and find that testing availability. Typically, they're using the Westerly site or the South Kingston site, but this will allow in-school testing for our athletes to not have to go off-site to get that. And for if you're a distance learner, we have several members of the high school team that are very supportive and would like to see this as well. So our athletic director, Michael Shields, our athletic trainer are all on board to support. Kristen Clark is also on board. Her, myself, and Greg McKenzie are scheduled for training on Buy Next Now Thursday morning at the Dunkin' Donuts Center. So then we will become the district trainers to move that forward. We will be using Wednesday. So myself, Craig McKenzie, and Kristen Clark are drafting sort of communication to our families, so they're aware of this and what this will look like. Similar to how, as you saw when we did the reopening of schools, we'll have sort of a, you know, this is what you want to know, question and answer, who to contact. But we do think it will provide some alleviation for our faculty and staff to have that opportunity. While we're not ready to put it at every school, or we may not be, we do know that early release on Wednesday provides us an opportunity. So we're looking at Wednesdays as sort of our testing day. This way, any staff from across the district, once we're up and running, can simply come to the main campus if they're interested in a Buy Next Now test. Again, not for next week, but as we're moving forward. But that really is our biggest push. And once we have that ready, I will be sharing with the school committee at the updates on Friday, sort of that messaging, what the consent looks like, with the idea that we should be up and running for our trial on Wednesday of next week. But we will be training our school team this Friday, and they will be getting the test this Friday based on their training, so they can see how it all works. And the only other thing I'd like to mention is right now, just so everyone knows, we are still at about 75% in-person learners and 25% distance learners as of today. And what our travel, there's been a lot of updates in the playbook. So what that means for us is it does not change our student travel policy. So in our COVID attendance policy that the school committee approved, we require a 14-day quarantine. A couple of parents were questioning, you know, what does that travel mean? And just for edification for the school committee, basically travel, and John and I had this conversation, for us, travel incorporates leaving the state to attend an event, a performance, with a gathering, family reunion party outside of your household. So no, it's not shopping at the market in Massachusetts, but if you attend a theater, a dance competition, a basketball tournament, we would consider that an event in a hotspot. You would have to quarantine for the 14 days. Per our policy, we are using the updated playbook for the quarantine, but one of the things of allowing students back, for example, at the high school, they know if I'm a close contact, I can now return back with a negative test. But as we get up and running with Buy Next Now, we'll be able to also offer parents the option on Wednesdays, if they're interested, to again test their children if they opt in for the consent. So if they're willing to do that, and once, like I said, once we're up and ready. But right now our focus will be first high school and Cala staff, and then athletes, with our next cohort of students being CTC and smaller populations that would be impacted.
Thank you. Coming events.
Coming events. So we have, I'm very excited. We have our Charahoe Tech virtual open house Thursday. We've been tweeting and putting that on Facebook. So share the message. We're excited about that. Looking forward to that opportunity, 6 to 8 on Thursday. On Monday, there is no school for staff or students. On January 25th, we have our statewide PD day. So it's an asynchronous learning day for our students, and staff will be invested in time around professional learning opportunities. We also have our virtual post-secondary planning night, 6:30 on January 27th. We have a change of plans for our elementary progress reports. So the elementary principals, it was requested, the teachers came in December to the superintendent education advisory panel and requested a review of how we do elementary progress reports and the necessity. We just gave out elementary report cards in December, and that now the progress reports are up. So their ask was that it's too close in time. So after deliberation with myself and Jane, really looking through to make sure there was no policy impact, which there was not, we brought it to the elementary school principals for review to have that conversation. We had a robust conversation last Wednesday to think through that. And on Monday, we coordinated messaging to all elementary schools. And you could hear the cheers from the elementary school teachers, appreciative that their feedback was heard, and that basically what we're asking them to do is track a need. So if any student for any reason has a concern in any content for any reason or learner quality, that the teacher track, follow up with parents via email, phone, and that we're thoughtful about ensuring that we keep them updated. That's really our biggest concern, that the parents are aware of a concern and that we're working on that. So that is a change. So we will not be, and elementary principals will be asked to message families about that change by the end of this week. And then on February 5th, the secondary end of the grading period for second quarter. And that is the end of the reports.
Thank you. This is the time, any requests from the school committee for future agenda items or legal opinions? Yes, Mr. Luzon.
I have a couple of questions. One is, Catherine, how on earth did you track down Bill? You did it too. I can't find the blue hand and you guys get the blue hands. I thought as co-host you didn't get them. That's one question.
Okay, blue hands.
Linda, I can answer that quickly if you don't.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
I know, Donna, don't yell at me, but
you're yellow now too.
Zoom was updated. So depending on your screen, you may see a function at the bottom that says reactions. And if you click on that, the little hand is in that. So if you didn't update, you may still see a little hand that says raise hand. And sometimes if you're still smaller, you'd have to go into the participant screen and click more and then find the hand there. And if none of that works, Craig, I'm gonna have to see your computer.
I couldn't see the hand at all, anywhere.
No,
Anyway.
it's still working. That's all right.
Okay.
Mr. Luzon, do you have another?
Yes, I do. One is, I would like, it's been a while since we've had one. Can John give us a presentation, an executive session at one of these future meetings about, and give us some legal updates? I have a question on one that, but it wouldn't hurt for him to at least enlighten us on all outstanding legal dealings where we have. And my next one is kind of goes with that, but I guess I need a 2/3 vote to do this. This past week, I read 2 newspapers, and they both had the same editorial in it from a former state senator in reference to something that happened at North Kingston High School or school system in regards to students and that didn't quarantine or something of this nature, and the commissioner ruled against the school district. I would just like an update on it. So I guess that's a legal opinion from John. So that's what I'm asking for. So I guess that's a motion.
Are you making a motion?
I'm asking for a legal opinion. So
Okay. So you want to make a motion that you want the legal opinion on?
yes. Now we have to vote. We have to vote on that.
I understand. So what is your motion, sir? That you want a legal opinion on?
Gina, did you understand what I was referencing?
I can definitely.
Is it liability? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure the specifics around the North Kingston case.
I
but
just
can
like an update on it and John's opinion, because that way going forward, this could happen to us too.
What I do know is we put it in policy. So if a district did not put it in policy and just put it in sort of like a messaging to families, they're finding some hiccups. But because you voted on the policy that has the 14-day quarantine, we're allowed to go above guidance from Rhode. We are not allowed to go below the minimum. So while they changed the standard of quarantine, embedded in our policy is the 14 days.
So do you?
So I just have to double check that with
Yeah, but
what their issue was.
Do you feel then I don't need John's opinion on this if we have this established in our policy?
If that was the case, I just want to make sure there's nothing I'm missing with the North Kingston case.
All right, but I'm just concerned, so I don't know. I guess we could still vote on it, so. But you
Okay,
know what I'm requesting. I think the others are gonna get an idea what I'm requesting.
Okay, Mr. Luzon made a motion to ask for John to give us a legal opinion.
Second.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, that's Mr. Day made a second. Okay, thank you. Any more discussion or questions on that legal opinion?
Now, this is 2/3, right, Chair?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Donna would pipe in if it wasn't, so. I don't think there's any more questions on that. Is that too general at this point? I'm just concerned that is it too general of you want a legal opinion about the incident that happened in North Kingston, basically?
Correct. And
Okay.
how could that impact us? And if it does, what could we do?
Okay. Okay.
I don't believe it's 2/3 for this. I think it's just
a majority.
Yeah, I believe so. I don't think it has anything to do. I think when you're moving a question is 2/3, but I don't think asking for a legal opinion.
Oh, I thought legal opinions were also 2/3, but I could be mistaken.
Yeah, I don't believe there is a 2/3 requirement for that.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to check that for next time, but those if there's not any other discussions or questions, those in favor of asking for the legal opinion from John? Let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Any opposed? Any abstentions or recusals? Okay, abstentions, David? Okay, David, everyone voted in favor except for David Stahl voted for an abstention. Do you get that, Donna? Okay, so any other requests for future agenda items or legal opinions? Mr. Day, that's right. I'm sorry, sir, you had your hand up. You have the little yellow hand up.
I may be able to, I was going to go a different direction, but I think I answered my own question here. I may be able to answer Mr. Lazan's situation. At the bottom of my screen, I got a mute, stop video, security, participants, share screen, record, and then that's where I found a raise hand. So I don't know whether he has that same thing across the bottom of his screen, but I just pushed that button and my hand come up. So I'm going to push it and my hand went down. So it's working for me, and I'm certainly, it would help you in the future, because I just cannot believe that you can keep your head on straight trying to look at the screen and see who's raising their hand. And I know a few people had some issues even getting recognized tonight. So it worked for me. So hopefully it can work for other people, but I can raise it all in my hand by pushing that one button, and next to it between record and breakout rooms. So I don't know, anybody else has that same?
I don't. And if I click on more, I can lower all hands.
No, not more.
Assuming still just a co-host.
Okay.
Could I ask you, where's your mute button? And stop
Can I raise my hand? No, I think the issue, as Gina said, is if you didn't update Zoom, like every so often Zoom sends you like requests to update. And if you updated your recent Zoom, then, because I have a little yellow hand like Bill has too. And I think if you keep updating it, I think you get all the new iterations of Zoom.
I don't know how I updated.
So, Ryan, is that what you were going to say?
No, Chair. I was going to say we're 3 minutes away from going over 10, and I don't want to have to vote.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about yellow hands. George had his hand up.
I'd recommend we move on.
Floor very quickly. And
I'm sorry.
yes,
When the prompt comes up, the blue and white prompt, when I click on school committee meeting, executive committee comes up.
well, thank you so much, George. But we do have a time constraint right now. We have to adjourn the meeting.
Yeah, it's not a big deal.
So, Mr. Callahan, you have the floor, please.
Chair, I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Okay, there's been a motion and a motion by Mr. Callahan, a second by Mr. Luzon. Any discussion on that matter? No. George, do you have your hand up to discuss or are you voting yes?
No, I just want to.
Okay, so all in favor for adjourning the meeting? Thank you.
Oh,
That was an awesome meeting. Thank you so much. And yes, Mr. Day, the meeting is adjourned. It does get difficult, but
now that the meeting's over, my daughter said she'll update the system for me.
Okay, good.
Craig, maybe only Anne Marie can do it because you have her name sometimes.
Yeah, I know. Maybe that's the problem.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
Hey, Craig, now that you mentioned that, I do have to look at the 2/3 vote. I can't remember if John said we had to have one or not. So
okay, but it was a majority except for one, Donna.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank. It's too late.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to check on that too. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye.
Good night.
Bill, can I ask you a question before you go?
Me?